It starts with a simple question and ends in objective reality. Through our journey from there to here, we find one another and ourselves. And as the next 24 hours breaks free from our last, we gaze onward in reflection of the day.
Come to your own conclusions. Stay vigilant.
Welcome to the Daily Wrap-Up.
Monday, August 3rd, 2026. Thank you for joining me today. I think we have a couple of things that are helping from the issues we've been having for those that have been watching our tech issues over the last couple of days. So we'll find out today. Be sure to let me know if you hear me okay and the videos are playing. I have a couple of things I want to point out before we get started. I mentioned a artificial intelligence sort of pledge that Derek and Whitney and myself are working on, and we're running it through the IMA right now. Pretty much everybody in the IMA was interested in signing it. And what basically it'll amount to, I'm going to be putting it out on, I think might already be a joint post about to go out that we were just working on. And I'm going to be posting it to my website, which is kind of the way we designed it. Not going to be something that's ultimately forced or even pressured on anybody. It's just something like a tool we created. So because we can tell, I think we all agree that people care about knowing, not necessarily that it's all or nothing for everybody, but that people want to know, even those that accept some parts of it, they want to know to what degree content is involving artificial intelligence. Whether that's, like I said last time, I'm not even using it to make images anymore, only because of this. Not that I see a compromising issue with that in the context of what we're going through. Some people disagree, but that because I just think it's important to make that line, right? And so what it ultimately amounts to is a pledge that and you'll read it when it comes out, saying that we think it's important this is being discussed and that people who want to do this can sign on to this. And what they're basically signing on to is, and if they can post the pledge itself if they choose to, signing on to basically being transparent about how much artificial intelligence is used in content you create, articles, anything. For TLAV, it'll be nothing. Right. And this is the point. Like there's in any content creation, even the ideas of images, artificial intelligence won't be used. And the point is we're going to be making sure we post that. And we're going to be starting, I think, some kind of an icon that we can put on things, videos, articles, like an AI with a slash through it or something that can be, a signal that associates with the IMA and what we do, conscious resistance, Last American Vagabond, limited hangout, and basically post. So when you see that, you'll know, okay, that means there's no AI in here. And that's going forward going to be important. And it's just a principled stance I think we should be taking. And like I said to everybody else, even those in the IMA that are, may not want to necessarily commit to it or have a different opinion, the point is that it's a personal line for everybody to draw. We all care about it. But it's important to realize that everybody has the different things they rationalize and not always with negative intention. And it's the same kind of point with anything, is that if we're going to be super purist about it, I mean, we shouldn't be driving cars and we shouldn't be using any technology. That kind of perspective is out there. And I don't disagree in a super purist sense, but in a realistic sense with what we're doing, some of these things end up being necessary. And so if you disagree with that, talk about it, make that clear. Criticize people you think are doing something wrong. The point, though, is that it ends up being something that we choose for ourselves individually. And so that's why I'm choosing, as for Ryan Cristian, the Last American Vagabond, and through that, Derek and Whitney and everybody else associated with us, and they're doing it for their individual sites, that we will put it down as we don't use AI in the creation of content, period. I just think that's important. And I think everybody agrees, but it'll be being talked about more. And then what I already basically said is that ultimately, so where I'm at today with what we were dealing with, some kind of confusing memory issues and different things all over the place. I've got some really great comments from you guys out there. And like I said, I've never claimed I know what's happening. It very well could just be something I'm doing wrong, some kind of glitch, StreamYard. I don't know. And that's just being objective about it. I do feel like there's something going on. But overall, the point was what I've effectively done, which is either just working within the constraints of whatever's happening or something I should have been doing in the first place, is shrunk down what I'm doing, how much I have open, and so on. And ultimately, why I find it interesting is before this, and I mean like weeks ago, we've had our issues here and there. But what's interesting, and you may not know this, I have my window open for the show, and you can see, a lot of tabs. People get stressed out by it. But you may not have known that for the last year, I have like 2-3 other windows open with all kinds of tabs. And I know that drains the computer, but that's why I went with what I have in order to be able to do that. So something changed over the last week. I don't know. And maybe that's something, I mean, I didn't do anything different here, but I'll leave it there for today. I just wanted to point that out to people. And so one more thing, if you've been following TLAV, that I'm kind of juggling here with different things I've had to change, other browsers open because the StreamYard just won't let me put, blah, blah, blah. But at the end of the day, I'm dealing with it today, which will amount to probably a much shorter show. But what the reason I'm even saying this again today is because you know what? Whether it's just a glitch or something being done, what I find interesting is historically, this has always worked well for us. That ultimately, what have I been talking about? Like, I need to make these shorter. I need to try to make content more. And here we are, so we get kind of pressured into doing what will probably be a blessing in disguise. Put it that way. But we'll look at it that way either way. Otherwise, we'll be frustrated about things like this. But today, we're going to make it a pretty focused show. I've got three main points that I want to get into today that I think are important. One is about RFK Jr. and a new gain of function document that came out on the 28th that he was just doing the rounds about. And interestingly, we just did sort of a tangential / follow-up to gain of function on the 23rd that had to do with their feigned bacteria system, which I argued was very similar, and other peer-reviewed science has argued the same. And I just talked about that, but pointed back to the gain of function. Interestingly, on the 28th, they came out with a new document that said basically what I was telling you guys, what I already knew by reading the original document, basically that there are versions of gain of function that they are going to continue. And then he goes back on Fox and says, we're ending gain of function and there's no gain of function. So I have to make that point. I mean, it's kind of crazy that he feels maybe I could say and admit and be objective that maybe he doesn't know that he's lying, but it's HHS's own document that says it. And we'll go over it today. I'm going to make a point about the Board of Peace, just a quick one, understanding where that's at with Gaza, where the ongoing genocide and the constant violation of the alleged ceasefire that was never in place, that everyone pretends is, that Israel keeps violating, and showing you that this alleged deal that Trump just made, that Israel is one, like I showed you, not along with it, and outright says what's in the thing is not even what Israel says they agree to. It's literally Iran 2.0 in that way. So who knows? I guess this may be some tactic there. I don't know. We'll get into that. But we're also going to talk about what's going on with Spain, Morocco, in that conversation. Just a couple of updates, because we did a pretty good follow-up yesterday about the intelligence from the Morocco intelligence services, just in case that's not how you say that properly, that were found inside of these, caravans or whatever you want to call them. And I just think that's very relevant, along with New York Times relating that there are people that were told to go. And what we covered yesterday, we're going to follow up with some pretty alarming stuff, especially from the image you can see showing Moroccan authorities violently threatening Moroccans trying to come back to their territory. To me, I mean, that doesn't necessarily have to relate with the coordinated thing we're talking about, but what does that mean? And I mean, I feel like it does show you there's something there, but we'll go through that today and then finish with what's happening with Iran and some updates. And it will probably be quite a bit shorter than we're used to on the show. I want to start with one point that I just thought was interesting. Now, I haven't talked about YouTube in a long time. We're still doing our pirate channels, which I haven't changed in a long time because they're not really censoring. And ultimately, I just decided to kind of give it a long stretch and see what the differences were. Apparently at the moment, they're not. And I'll remember the channels we're using are 1,000 subscribers, whereas before we had 100,000 plus. I tend to think that the censorship really kicks in when they feel like you're getting too much reach on that platform. Regardless, I saw this when I was opening the window that I'm now closing every show back into the pirate channel that I was using. And I accidentally used a different login, or it auto-filled the login for the old TLAV channel and logged into it. And this is what it showed me. And I thought, oh, I'm just going to load out. Then I noticed the message was different. Because we talked about this last time, right? Where ultimately YouTube they kind of reoffered like Twitter had to all these different people. And some, like David Icke, for example, got his channel back. And I think Corbett got his channel back. I noticed that they apparently did reevaluate the channel, but very much said, well, your channel won't be put back. And it says, we've taken a careful look at your channel again and confirmed again that it violates our community guidelines. Remember, guys, this literally cites back to COVID-19 misinformation. That's what this was. When this was taken down, it was with a video that was going over over a million views. We were truly starting to go truly viral, over 100,000 subscribers, and they shut it down. And ever since, guys, ever since. But of course, they reevaluate and said, not you, not you. And I think we all know why. So let's start with RFK Jr. and exactly why I think people like us and our work, IMA, independent, objective, actual, people that actually care about the truth, they don't want that kind of content out there. Here's the clip I'll play first. This is what he posted. Now, before I even play the clip, I want to reiterate that we went through this back on May 9th. Literally, the title in part was Gain of Function Head Fake. I literally read through the document they put out. This was May 5th, 2025, improving the safety and security of biological research. This is what they pointed to, arguing they were ending gain of function. But as I pointed out, as we went through in depth in that show and the follow-up, what they were talking about was dangerous gain of function. And they even have an acronym, which was DGOF. So they're saying specifically the dangerous versions. And as you read through this, it makes it clear that there are carve-outs for ones they want to continue. I made that clear then. I'm not going to go through the whole thing again because that would be too redundant. But please, if you want to watch the show, go through and we make it very clear that it was obvious, just like with the COVID-19 shot they said was ending when it wasn't. They were just carving out a certain area of it for themselves. So they're lying to you. It's simple as that. We also, again, followed up on this one, which was on the 23rd of July, where we talked about specifically what I said was the phage bacteria system, which that's what this image is. Now, it's a weird thing where they take viruses and infect bacteria, which then use to cause things. It's very similar, and it's a different thing, but they're doing it, which I showed. It's like always, there's just more, we get over-focused on one thing, and there's plenty of other variations. And my point would be that this is just, or if not just, can be dangerous in the same ways. And I showed plenty of peer-reviewed science that people making those exact arguments. And this is it's not an old thing, but it's not necessarily brand new, but it's something that's growing in that direction, especially now that they're trying to make it look like they're stopping gain of function. I get a feeling that this is in that category and it'll probably end up being shown as such in the future. But back to the clip. Here's what he said. Nothing good has ever come out of gain of function. Even that sentence alone, which he does say. Well, then why are you continuing some versions of it? You didn't say nothing comes good ever of dangerous gain of function. You just said gain of function. He really wants you to believe that they're not doing it anymore. So with the video, we seem to have no problem so far. Please let me know immediately if there's any issue. If you can't hear it, I'm just going to pull the video back and just talk about it. Okay, so let me know.
Research is a kind of research where you take a pathogenic organism like a coronavirus and you try to make it more virulent. You try to get it so that it can spread faster and that it's more deadly.
Okay. Seems good so far, guys. This is even dishonest, and he knows this. I mean, it's not dishonest. It's selective. It's selective omission, really. Gain of function, as I think I have something up today that will show you this, is not necessarily, it's most commonly more dangerous, but it's not necessarily just about more dangerous. I think the reason he's only focusing on specific variations that make it more dangerous is because they carved out the dangerous gain of function. The issue is not necessarily about just dangerous, because the point would be that there are things that they would do. They didn't claim these things were dangerous the last 20 years. The point would be that maybe they're doing things now they genuinely don't think are, that could be, because you're playing God, you're manipulating these things that have side effects they don't foresee. That's the whole point. So when he says that about making it more virulent, more dangerous, yes, that's part of it. But really, as you know, because you watch the show and other people who care about making sure we understand these things, it's about gaining a function, as it very clearly says. There's loss of function too, which is in the same wheelhouse, by the way. Loss of function, they don't talk about, only because the argument is it amounts to taking away something it can do. But you have to understand, we're still talking about manipulation that could end up with something that they didn't plan for. So it's not necessarily about the one thing that makes this more, pathogenic or makes it spread faster. Yes, but everything else too. And this is why it's important to understand that the very category of gain of function is dangerous. And not even just gain of function, but the category of that type of science in any direction. And this is the reason, more than once, by the way, and what they're pretending now, the U.S. government has acted like they've tried. They said, we recognize, I think it was 2014, it's dangerous. We can't allow it, and then carried on doing it, which we can prove. This is what they're doing again. It's just a different variation, in my opinion. So making sure that's clear, I think there's a reason, I'll start it over, that he wanted to make sure he carved out just those things. He's trying to misdirect about what the definition of these things actually means, because eventually, in my opinion, when it comes out clearly, even though that's what we're doing now, but when I mean comes out, when Tucker and Alex Jones talk about it, when it comes out, ultimately they'll be like, well, that's what we said. It's not the one that makes it more dangerous. It's not the one that makes it spread faster. Thank you, Benny Johnson. Like, that's what will happen when that comes to pass. That's what I'm guessing. Let's watch this again.
Take a pathogenic organism like a coronavirus and you try to make it more virulent. You try to get it so that it can spread faster. Correct. And that it's more deadly.
Or just gaining any kind of function. my opinion, or losing one. It's the same category.
And why would you do such a thing? Well, either because you want to weaponize it or because they say that we want to develop a vaccine against future mutations, which is nonsense. No good thing has ever come from gain of function.
Okay. So did he carve out a specific kind? No, he just said gain of function. And I agree with everything you just said outside of the original half story. So if when I show you, which you know already, that they are still doing it, then how do you reconcile that? It's that he's being dishonest. I mean, it's like I'm trying to constantly be as objective as possible, but sometimes, like with Trump and Iran, you just got to be honest, guys. He's lying to you. Everybody knows that. And that's where we're at with this.
Research. So we've now adopted a system that is going to end it in our country, and we believe will end it around the world.
Okay, now you could argue in this way he's playing with the words that he means that this direction will eventually end up in the ending of all of this, but not yet. Not until we get past the few things we have to do. And maybe he means like that. The reason I'm even including this is because that's what you might get from people trying to make sense looking back when we find out they lied. This is, no, he didn't lie. This is what he meant. He just meant that eventually he'll get there. We all know this is how politics is going right now, or always has worked, but getting ahead of it will help people see that. But I'm going to go through the actual documents that make a very clear statement that they will continue to work on medical countermeasures under the umbrella of specific gain of function. What do you think? I mean, that is literally what he just pointed to.
Because any scientist, we will no longer support science in other countries that support it.
Now, that does seem to be what the statement says, but that's not the same as ending it here or with your allies. So you're talking about countries you don't like without proper oversight, which is what the document says. Your allies, it seems to be a different story with you as well.
Any scientist that does these experiments will be punished, and they can be permanently banned from any kind of grants. And the universities also that support this research will also suffer liability. We've had too many bad things happen.
Selectively, I'm sure, right? Where ultimately it becomes, oh, well, this group that said the wrong thing about Palestine or whatever is the one we decide to call out for the thing that we allow others to do. Just my opinion. But at the end of the day, it seems to be working pretty well right now. This is good. And I think this is just, the parameters we have to work within now. But so, as I said before, though, to be very clear, I mean, this is a general point. Loss of function is not the same thing as gain of function, technically speaking. But as you understand it, you're manipulating this to change something from its natural state to a different state, right? That's the point. And so there are unforeseen consequences. Do your due diligence, whichever way you're talking about. And this is why the general category was, what they put a moratorium, they say on it, and they lied, guys. That's the same thing we're dealing with now. So as I said, he's knowingly lying about this. And I referenced my 2 shows. Here they are again, if you want to watch them for yourself. Now, this is from July 31st. This is just a regular, and not like a calling it out kind of a thing, just a general overview of what was said. And then we'll go through the actual documents from HHS. This is White House issues sweeping new restrictions on high-risk life sciences research. So I saw this and I'm like, wait a minute, July 31st? Okay, this came out in May, right? And this is what they're generally pointing. So this is where I came to find out, okay, they're actually talking about a different document that they just reissued on July 28th. Called Trump administration releases new government-wide policy to end dangerous gain of function. Okay, so I'm thinking, when I was going through this, I'm like, well, then what was this supposed to be? This executive order talking about how they were going to end it. Okay, so what it amounts to is Trump signing an executive order, which, as we all should know by now, isn't really it applies to the executive branch, which is a lot of what this pertains to, but it's not the way they like to make it sound like it's just now law and everyone follows. So that's what people tend to pretend it's like. Now, this becomes HHS, Health and Human Services, putting into policy, not just an executive order, the actual statements. Now, what I find interesting about this is that what I was saying based on this document, which is less clear than what you're about to see from the new one, is exactly what they tell you now. And we got, as usual, so much pushback around the reality of this, just demonstrating our value as always, that this is now what they're essentially admitting, and this is what we were telling you all the way back then. Now, this says on July 31st, referencing the new document, on the 28th of July, the White House, Department of State, and the Department of Health and Human Services publicly released the one I just pointed to. Now, it says under dangerous gain of function, the policy describes dangerous gain of function, specifically DGOF, not the same as, the ones we'll point to in a second. It says, as research that, quote, enhances a property or properties of a biological agent in ways that make it more dangerous. That's how they describe it. But if you look up the definition, it simply is gaining a function. Doesn't have to necessarily, by definition, be a dangerous thing. They make the distinction to make it about dangerous, specific gain of function, which means if you're just a logical person, that there's a carve out for ones they deem not dangerous. But that's not the conversation, isn't it? That's not the clear part, by the way. The conversation is about ending it in general, which you just heard him gloat about. The policy also defines potential dangerous gain of function research specifically, and this goes back to the May document as well, as research with a biological agent that, quote, could potentially result in one or more of these outcomes. And it's all the stuff we know about increasing, transmissibility, altering, making it more dangerous, hurting more people. And so if it's under the definition of potentially dangerous that could lead to more or one of these outcomes, it says this research is permissible only after review and a recommendation to ensure it does not meet the definition of dangerous. You see? Now, what's crazy is I had so many people who I maybe even good intention that said, Brian, you're blowing out of proportion. They just meant the gain of function is dangerous. You know what? And you could have been right. But if you just look at it logically, it's clear that you don't need to add these extra descriptors. It's about making a carve out. Always. At least in my experience is what I mean. Not that tomorrow will be that, but so far in my work doing this, I mean, it's almost 10 for 10 or whatever. It's consistent in my experience. So this is just their review of it, by the way. I'll go to their actual document. But what they're saying simply is that they now have a permissible version, which is the same on the May 5th document, where they will allow this if it's under review and a recommendation that to ensure that it does not meet the dangerous definition that they've carved out for gain of function for a newly established independent third-party review body, the ITPRB, which will consist of officials and subject matter experts across fields, including molecular biology, biosafety, biosecurity, cybersecurity, law enforcement, national security, ethics, and public health policy, and which should complete standard reviews within 90 calendar days of receiving material. Oh, they have a whole streamlined setup, guys, which implies that there won't just be one occasional, but you're going to have people putting in reviews for gain of function that doesn't mean dangerous, which means gain of function research is not ending. Seems pretty simple to me, doesn't it? So why would he go on there saying no more gain of function and we're going to end it around the world, except where you're allowed to send requests for us to, again, I'm mixing the words up, to be permissible is the word kept getting stuck in my mouth. But so continuing, within 90 calendar days, you'll receive the materials with the expedited review available within 30 days for the declared public health, agricultural emergencies, or matters of clinical national security. Oh, great. Critical, excuse me. So now when you declare a pandemic, you can go, well, now we can do it in 30 days. Cool. I mean, guys, how do you not see how obvious this is? And it's exactly what people called out with Fauci. I take the fifth. But you know why? Because they're still doing the same things. And ultimately, Trump is completely culpable for everything Fauci was involved in. Anybody without partisan blindness can tell that. It says the policy notes, policy is capitalized, it's the group, that the policy notes that the positive benefits of research that contributes to the development and approval of medical countermeasures. Those are vaccines, ladies and gentlemen, and whatever new futuristic direction they have underneath that should be weighed against the potential negative social consequences. Oh, so the benefits outweigh the risks. That sure came full circle, didn't it? And the point, though, is that this is not some secondary category. This is right here under the category of specifically dangerous gain of function research. So what they're talking about is, and this is in their documents, the policy note that the positive benefits of potentially dangerous gain of function, that they will then decide whether or not it falls before or after, and that we're still going to use that category for medical countermeasures using gain of function. Very, very, very obvious. I was going to go back to one thing here real quick. What was it? Yeah, I mean, I'm sure you guys got the point of that. So this is just their overview of it. Here is their document. Now, you can read through all of this, and it's exactly the same thing. I think the one part stands out the most to reiterate the part that we were highlighting, which is specifically the new policy prohibits federal support for, and by the way, I want to be clear about this, and this is, again, kind of like this is my opinion about the way they word these things. I've been right about these historically, but in many cases, like the dangerous part, it wasn't my opinion. It was obvious what they were doing. In this case, though, this is my opinion, and I could be wrong about this, when they say the policy prohibits federal support, which, by the way, lines up with all of the documents Doesn't that seem to carve out specifically? So what if it's Palantir? What if it's XAI? What if it's some other biological extension from Elon Musk's CureVac? That wouldn't be federal, would it? So they're prohibiting federal funding. So you could even argue that means states could do it. You could argue that means that Elon Musk could fund them anyway, or anybody else. You see how easy that is to sidestep? But anyway, prohibits support for the dangerous gain-of-function research conducted within the United States and abroad. Establishes rigorous, this is even the same sentence, establishes rigorous independent review for certain high-risk life sciences research. They just went out of their way to not say gain-of-function. But literally, the entire thing is focused on specifically, this was the wrong document. It's right here. Yeah, it's the same thing. Dangerous, high-risk research. That's gain-of-function, right? So when they're talking about this same category and they simply call it as high-risk life science research, which is the same category, they're just saying they have now rigorous independent review for the certain ones that they decide are okay, and restricts federal funding for research conducted in countries or institutions that lack appropriate biosafety, biosecurity, and oversight. So not in general, like he said, but only the ones they deem don't have proper gain-of-function systems. I mean, how is anybody not just running these people out of their positions? They're so blatantly dishonest. This is from HHS. It's their very document. It's just like the COVID-19 shots. All the screaming idiots on Twitter said, oh my God, they ended it. Even some that I don't think are stupid. They just fell for the going around circle, the narratives. And in the document he posted on the third paragraph, it said some of these will continue. And I don't get it. I mean, I do. I think it's deliberate, but people fall for it. And then it goes, at the same time, the policy preserves critical biomedical research, including the development of vaccines, therapeutics, diagnostics, and other medical countermeasures under strong safety and security safeguards. So that really breaks down to, we'll stop people we don't think are good, which whatever that means, as you're the worst people in the world, and ultimately we are going to continue doing it with ones we think are okay. Right? We'll do gain of function, but under our safety, security, safeguards, and it'll all be okay. Well, that's exactly what you said at Fort Detrick. It's exactly what you said every time we could point back. Isn't that frustrating, guys? It is to me, because of how freaking obvious it is. And again, you want to read through this from May 5th or just simply watch the show we did over it, because I read basically the whole thing. It's very clear that this was the point from the beginning. Now, also highlight John Fleetwood's Substack from July 30th. Says the new Trump admin policy permits gain-of-function experiment funding under new definition. Potential dangerous. So he saw it as well. But I just want to pat our own back here and point out that we were breaking this down on May 5th, right? Or rather the May 9th when we did the show on it, which I think that was some foresight right there, because they weren't making it as clear as they are now. Now it says the Trump administration, this is John's Substack, Trump administration's newly released United States government policy for stopping high-risk life sciences research. That's the document we were just showing you, right? High-risk life sciences research. Oh, that's the one I was going to point to. I already have it open right here. Where was it? Right here. Yeah, that's the one I already have open. So the point was to show you that in this one, it seems they go out of their way, getting mixed up here. This one, to say dangerous high-risk research, but don't make it life science research, right? And this one, they make it same point, same general document. This one came out from the White House. The other one was HHS. This one was a couple days earlier. And it simply says stopping high-risk life sciences research. The reason that's important is because in the other document, they make it clear that those certain life science research important to vaccines will continue. There you go. So they're just changing the terms, just like Fauci saying EPPP research. We all knew he was lying. He was trying to sidestep the term because what do you think they're doing? It's just like everything else. The Trump administration sells you what you want to hear and then makes up a new narrative to keep doing what they've always been doing. That's not unique to left or right or Trump or Biden, guys. It's just our government, and they keep doing it. But guess what? The good note is people are seeing it. I know you see it. People everywhere are paying attention. But he says, but the policy also creates a new category, potential dangerous gain of function, that may still receive federal approval. Isn't that just the dumbest thing in the world? Like, it's so blatantly dishonest and just a lazy sidestep. And so I was going to highlight in this very document as well, the one that July 20th, 2026, it says right here, same thing. And there's more, all the stuff we just went over, but this is the standout about specifically allowing the type of work. It says the policy does not prohibit development of essential medical products, medical countermeasures, and protect against bioterrorism, biological weapons, nor does it prohibit international collaboration. I mean, this is literally talking about, what do you think a medical countermeasure is for a bioterrorism biological weapon? Guys, that's a vaccine in their minds. Over and over. I mean, it's not like he's saying, here's our new countermeasure to a biological threat. He's claiming they do that and it's dangerous and we shouldn't do it anymore. But here in your own document from the White House, you cite that's exactly what you're going to keep doing. Now, you could argue that RFK, like I said, is somehow being misled. I think that's hard to reconcile with what we've been seeing. But you guys can decide for yourselves. Now, talking about Gaza for a minute, and interestingly overlap, by the way, the medical field is more of a tangential step, even of the technocratic conversation. But we know how they're mixed. We see how these things lead to one another, right? And the way that, internal biosurveillance, all of it is alarming. Medical pre-crime. Why I'm talking about it here is because we have to remember that Gaza is essentially, at least as it seems, to be the first sort of technocratic freedom city, whatever they're talking about. And they literally even list it in this as being a technocratic city, which is not new. They've actually done that more than once. I just still find that pretty wild with what they know people are worried about. And in fact, I'll grab the Gaza article about that. One, really just because it shows in fact, this is more so about the people around it. We did talk about it. Gaza, freedom cities, and technocratic dystopia. It has the image behind it. You can see this is their image I added the icons and stuff, but this is their model for the freedom city in Gaza. And don't forget, they're already telling you that no Palestinians are going to be allowed to stay. Everything people like us were telling you in the beginning is exactly where we are. And not because we were guessing, because we paid attention to what Israel's been doing our entire lives. And now everyone's starting to see it. Thank God. But the Board of Peace comes out and says this: as part of the process of decommissioning weapons in Gaza and enabling, and by the way, we just talked about this, and the point was before, if you didn't see the show, was that Trump come out and said, we made a deal and it's going to be peace in Gaza, even though he literally already said he made that peace, and that was one of the 10 that he says he's already solved. This guy's such a clown. But ultimately, that now he put this deal out and Israel came out and said, that's not what we agreed to. And here Trump's just going forward. Is that a ploy? Is Israel lying? Is this like Trump's new thing, like Iran? I don't know. But it's really stupid. And it says, as part of the process of decommissioning weapons in Gaza and enabling the transition to civilian governance, which ultimately means that even if they go in this direction, and it won't be that Palestinians have their own sovereignty. It'll be a group that is given some authority, and then Israel dominates like they do right now. And it's not going to be any different, even if they're allowed to stay, which I doubt is going to be the case. It says, and creating a safer future in the region for both Israelis and Palestinians in Gaza. I mean, how embarrassing. Same thing. How insulting. As you listen to what they're saying, the Board of Peace being stacked with people like Tony Blair and Netanyahu. I mean, it's just a slap in the face, guys. And by the way, as this is happening, they're murdering people in Gaza. Rape and torture and starvation. It never stopped. And I'm not being hyperbolic, guys. Every day, there's more stories coming out. A meeting was held earlier today, and this was on the 3rd, it is today, between high representatives. This is Nikolay, Maldanov, together with the Board of Peace team. It's insulting they even have the nerve to call themselves the Board of Peace. And Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and his team, just alone. It should just, they're laughing at you. And it says, the meeting was constructive and detailed. Israel and the Board of Peace share a common understanding of their ultimate objectives. I mean, it's just so unnerving. Like the fact that they just think that they know that nobody believes that. It's just crazy. The goal is clear and is not in question. The complete decommissioning of weapons in the Strip and the transition away from the rule by the gun to the civilian governance as they rule by the gun and bombs, but Israel doesn't agree to this. And so here's the Board of Peace, and with Trump leading it, claiming Israel's on board when they're going, we don't agree to this in real time. It's insane. And it goes on to say, where was I? Lost my place. Where was it? The reaching it will be a process, it says, and that process will be set out in the next phase of the work. Contrary to inaccurate reports, it says, we note that the full withdrawal of the IDF beyond the yellow line itself being a violation of the ceasefire that they pretend hasn't been violated, will take place only once decommissioning is complete. So the yellow line, which they've moved, and it's now represents more than 70% of the Gaza area they control, even though the whole thing they claimed it was for is dictating what area they've secured. But all they've done is use it to encroach and kill people on any side of it. And they're now using these concrete yellow bars. They're slowly taking it. That itself, as I showed you, was a violation of what they agreed to. Not that, but also letting people go back to the places in the other side. And they were not. And also on top of just continuing to murder people, as if that's not enough to say you violated the ceasefire if you're Israel. But what the point is saying once we do this, then that will happen. He's just giving him excuses anyway. And this is as Hamas committed to the mediators. This applies to light weapons, heavy weapons, tunnels alike. Okay. Implementation will be overseen by the International Stabilization Force and by the Implementation Verification Committee. So this is your new process, right? As countries get turned into their technocratic slaves, on which both the United States and the Board of Peace sit. And remember, Donald Trump has made himself, and this is not a joke, like emperor king for life. You can make up the term. He will be the leader of that forever. He made that the case, and it's not a secret. He didn't deny it. And also, he's making his tangential UN Security Councils. You know, it's funny how now Jones can finally call him a globalist, even though it's been clear forever. Reflect on how stupid that is from these people. Continued progress toward implementation in full depends on each side fulfilling its obligations. One more point on that, by the way. Do you realize how many people around them, and him included, if you would shout us down for making that point, for saying, you don't see how this is all globalist, look at what they're doing, and now they start saying that, even though we got made fun of by those people? You just have to laugh at how embarrassing these people can be. Now, here's what I find very relevant. What I noticed, and what's funny is, it's, you can see it right there. They changed the post, right? So they edited this. You want to see what they changed? I think you can already tell what I have highlighted. Oh, here, let me get it back to the right spot so you can see it. Look at that. So this is very, very revealing to me. So what you have is the original post. So Board of Peace, whoever's guiding that, Trump influence, I guarantee it, posted this. Then somebody said, whoa, we didn't guarantee a full withdrawal. Take that out of there. And so they take the word full out. That's all they did. The only word they take out is full. So it goes from saying, we note that the full withdrawal of the IDF behind the yellow line will take place once the okay. Then it goes to, we note that the withdrawal of the IDF behind the yellow line. Okay, now you may not find that relevant, but why would you remove it if it's not relevant? It's the fact that it was removed means that it's relevant, because full withdrawal with withdrawal technically shouldn't mean anything different, but it did to somebody. So somebody recognized, okay, we are going to withdraw, but not entirely, because that's what Israel's been doing the entire time, my entire life. And that's what the yellow line represents. They're going to pull back for, whatever, if maybe not at all, in fact, but the argument would be that if they did withdraw, that it wouldn't be forever, it wouldn't be entirely, because that's what they've always done. He's giving them an out, or whoever's doing this. Now, Israel conveys concerns to the U.S. about Hamas disarmament deal. Now, this is your super corporate, actually quietly, or, like we're pretend to be adversarial against the power of the right, but ultimately support the agenda with Israel kind of media, where they go, hey, they convey concerns. Well, if you actually want to read what they said, it's that we don't agree with what that says. But just funny, Mr. Sausage said, even the general partisan account says, Israel defies President Trump's peace plan and escalates attacks in Gaza, like we told you 2 days ago, by the way, which was they were still bombing in Gaza. In fact, they targeted Hamas on the following day where Trump said the deal was going forward, showing you that they were going, well, we don't care what you have to say. We're not going to stop. And the whole thing Hamas said was, well, we agree, Trump, but it's contingent on Israel agreeing as well. But then the next day, Israel bombs Hamas, and Trump ignores it. So it shows you this isn't real. Like, in none of it. Trump wants to pretend like he's winning. It's what it feels like. Here is what on today NPR says. Israel says it has serious concerns with the White House's Hamas disarmament deal. Now, it says Spielman told the Associated Press that Israel's intelligence assessment is that Hamas remains committed to rebuilding its military rather than genuinely demilitarizing. So the simple point to begin with is Israel's like, we don't believe them. We don't believe they want to do this. So there's no deal, guys. Israel does not agree. They don't think it's happening, and they're still bombing them. So it says, continuing, he said the Israeli military would not withdraw from Gaza. That's pretty easy to understand. Where it controls more than 60%, it's close to 70% before Hamas disarms. Okay, but what they're saying is before they disarm, they don't believe they're going to. And they're already rebuilding their arms, is what they're saying. So even if it's not true, what have we learned so far? That Israel will always go, but tunnels, rockets, human shields, and just do and kill everybody they want. Because the world, the ones that have the power to stop them, are either compromised or don't care. We have to understand that by now. But we're all fighting to change that. But just understand that this is only going to amount to more death and suffering if we pretend that Trump is actually fighting for something to give them peace. He is not. He's fighting for whatever gives him a win in a 30-second window is what it feels like. Now, it says Trump's 20-point ceasefire plan, 20-point, calls for on the militant group to surrender its weapons and destroy its vast network of tunnels, which at the end of the day, if it hasn't already been clear, will amount to them just officially going after everything they can, which they're already doing, but it'll just make it easier. It also envisions Israeli forces withdrawing from Gaza, which, again, is not even on the table, as Israel's repeatedly stated. I mean, you have Ben Gvir, Smotrich openly saying, like, look, we're taking this. We're taking Gaza. We're in here. We're not leaving. And so when you have Trump saying this stuff, you just know he's either that far out of the loop, which is alarming, or he's lying to you. And it says the arrival, again, is it also envisions Israeli forces withdrawing from Gaza, the arrival of a new technocratic Palestinian government. But realize, as Israel and even Trump's people have made clear, the Palestinians aren't involved in this. I mean, didn't Israel just ask them to take them into Spain, Gvir asked. The bottom line is it's a technocratic Palestinian government, and they're only Palestinian because they're in the area they're calling ex-Palestine or whatever they're going to say. Technocratic means them. The expert leadership, that's what the technical leadership, that's what they're going to claim they are. I mean, how much you want to bet it's going to be the Board of Peace? That they'll just take leadership just for a period of time, whatever their narrative will be. And yes, that's Netanyahu and Tony Blair, Donald Trump. A copy of the agreement obtained and verified by AP said that all weapons held by Hamas-run police will be transferred to the U.S.-backed Palestinian Technocratic Committee. Oh, wait. Okay, so wait, you're saying so the Palestinians will be disarmed, but then you're giving guns to the Palestinian. So it's not Palestinian. It's a cutout. They're calling a Palestinian Technocratic Committee. And it says a process to decommission and store heavy weapons and to dismantle military production sites and tunnels will begin after the arrival of the Palestinian Committee and the deployment of international forces. Whoa, okay. So now you're saying international forces, which who knows what that represents, will be deployed into this area, which never, I mean, in the beginning of this, that's not going to happen. We're not going to disrupt these people. We're not going to displace them. We're not going to ethnically cleanse them. We don't want their territory. We just want to help them and save them from us. Every single thing we told you is happening, including the idea, where was I? That you're an international deployment force, which will only amount to them taking it's already illegally occupied. So this is only going to make it even more difficult to pull away from this. And it's going to be in conjunction with a Palestinian Technocratic Committee, which is them. This is a very thin veneer of just them fully occupying the area. And it says the process will be linked to a phased Israeli withdrawal. Oh, so a phased, which means we're going to take a few steps back, allow you to stop, and then we're going to pretend that you did something and never do any more steps. Every single time. Every single time. Look back through history. Saudi Arabia, Yemen, Israel, Palestine. It's always the same ploy. And here, and again, I'm being hyperbolic when I say always, but I just mean in my experience, it's very common that they play this and just go, they fired a rocket. No, we have to stay forever, which is what they keep doing. And even then realize they have people that can easily pop off rockets from other groups and people inside of Gaza, which has been talked about and proven and written about forever. I mean, they have groups, even like the suicide bomber types in many cases are them carrying these things out to justify another act. It doesn't mean it's always that way, but that is a proven reality. The areas Israel controls in Gaza have been mostly destroyed and depopulated. Just a casual sentence in NPR about open genocide. Think about how crazy that is. The areas Israel controls in Gaza have been mostly destroyed and depopulated. That's it. Move along. Let's just casually acknowledge something we've been denying. Our entire NPR and every one of them have always gaslit us about the reality of what's going on. And now you just include a sentence that literally says they just depopulated the entire area? That's a crime, NPR. Why don't you include that next time? Most of the territory's 2 million Palestinians are in the other part. You mean so ethnically cleansed and displaced, right? Where hundreds of thousands live in squalid tent camps and destroyed neighborhoods. Let that live in infamy for the, I mean, you're willing to state that so clearly, but then you're going to undermine people's conversation of whether this is a genocide. And I'm not saying that alone would meet the definition of your arbitrary means to what, like the idea of the defined lines for what is genocide, which matters to a degree. But I've said this from the very beginning. If you're uncomfortable with acknowledging the reality of obvious genocide, then call it war crimes. You know, for your baby ears, if it's too tough for you, call it war crimes. But if you're going to pretend that it's not war crimes, then you're obviously being dishonest. There's people standing there go, tell me how it's genocide. Okay, fine. Are you ignoring that they're raping and torturing and killing children? Okay, then shut up because you're not involved. Let the adults speak. You know, like that's where these people are. Or they know it and try to lie to you about it. Israel appears unlikely to pull back significant forces or make concessions ahead of October elections. Oh, right. Okay. So also we're going to casually acknowledge that it's never going to happen because Israel lies. Cool. While Spielman said Israel greatly appreciates Trump's commitments to its security and to finding a durable resolution, the government's position on disarmament is based on detailed intelligence saying that Hamas continues to rearm, like I just told you. So if they're doing that now, then what that means is you're not going to do these things until they disarm. So the point is they could very well be disarming and Israel just goes, but they're not though. So we're not going to do that until they do this and create the very concept, like the point I'm making, where they could be sitting there unarmed, ready to go on the line, Trump ready to sign it. And Israel goes, no, they're still got arms. We don't believe it. Bomb them again. And what will the world say? Well, they refuse to disarm, even if it's not true. U.S. officials who brief report, and again, that's not some kind of like pro anything. The reality is that any group we're talking about, the history shows Israel and the U.S. conduct these type of tactics. You know, like feigning a peace talk and then murdering a religious leader. You know, casual stuff for them. U.S. officials who briefed reporters on the disarmament agreement last week said that Israel had been consulted at every step of the negotiations. Yeah, and excuse me, I just lost my place. Had been consulted at every step of the negotiations and was not being asked to do anything more than what it had committed to as part of the ceasefire hostage release agreement signed last October. U.S. officials. It's unclear what exactly Israel conveyed to the White House. Two people with knowledge of the deal told AP that Israel had communicated its issues with Tony Blair, who, by the way, is also, again, part of the Board of Peace, which should make you laugh out loud. One of them said that among the points Israel wanted was freedom to conduct military operations in Gaza. Think about how ridiculous that is. So you're talking about a deal to give them their own territory, but the one thing you want that makes this is that you want to be able to militarily do things in their territory. So then nothing changes. You understand what's happening? They spoke anonymously because they were not authorized to speak to the media, or means they'll get attacked by the group like Israel or Trump for pointing out the absurdity of all of this. Since the ceasefire was signed in last October, the ceasefire, Israel has continued striking Gaza, saying it's targeting Hamas and its infrastructure. See how lazy that is? You know, easily you can prove that's not true. Like if you were a real journalist, you would say, but verified evidence can demonstrate how they've been bombing children, how they've been executing people and down the line, guys. But no, but Hamas, they say it's Hamas. So we'll leave it there. Local Gaza hospitals said at least 17 were killed in the latest Israeli strikes, including children. But go on, NPR, tell us how they told us it was Hamas. A strike on a residential apartment in southern Gaza killed 3 family members, including their 4-year-old child, according to Nasir Hospital, where the bodies arrived. Even that, the idea that we don't know this happened. You realize we can literally prove these things are happening, especially today. But, they told us. And I mean, even that's better than it was before. But realize it's always like that with this kind of media. The Israeli military said the strikes had targeted militant operatives. Okay, NPR, did they? Because you can prove that right now. You know that, right? Say, and even more so with places like Lebanon, where they do the same thing. Well, Israel said they were targeting Hezbollah. Okay, where's the next sentence? But here's all the evidence that proves that wasn't true. And they'll never, ever do that. Or at least they haven't, in my experience. And just Pakistan today, Israel tells U.S. public Gaza plan does not reflect its position. That's from today. Netanyahu's office said the public version simply does not reflect what they believe. That's just so stupid to me. And that's where we are right now. That's the end point of this conversation as of today. Now, drop site news. Since the ceasefire, alleged in Gaza, was announced last October, Israeli forces have killed 1,233 Palestinians. They're not even denying this, by the way. They just say they're bombing Hamas. But you realize even bombing Hamas, specifically bombing Hamas, is a violation of your ceasefire. So how can you simultaneously have a ceasefire in place, but bomb the group that you are literally in a ceasefire with? Apparently, unless you're Israel, or only when you're Israel. That's when that works. I'm not joking, guys. That's insane. And that's where we are, because they're literally saying, but those are Hamas. But you have a ceasefire with Hamas. And over here, you just said the ceasefire is maintaining, but we're bombing Hamas. Including 266 children, 131 women, and 37 elderly. Wounded, 4,076, including 1,135 children, 694 women. See, injured, wounded could mean missing a leg, guys. Missing an arm, which is most common. And 175 elderly, according to the latest report. And it goes down the different breakdowns of these killings and attacks, middle of the night raids and people's tents and home. It's so unnerving. Death toll. Children, women, and elderly account for 35.1%. 49.1% of the wounded. Almost 50% of those wounded missing arms, legs, eyes, children, and women. There's nothing to compare to this. As somebody was pointing out recently, you want to compare that to Ukraine, which is another war we should care about, which we've talked about a lot, is what? I think it was in the single digits. And there are people right now acting like what this one shouldn't matter. Like, in fact, I wasn't even going to play it today, but a very embarrassing clip going around for Patrick Bet-David where he was like, "Oh, Ukraine, what about Ukraine? It should be America first." And Piers Morgan just says, "Well, what about Israel? Is that the same thing?" And it bothers me even to give Piers Morgan a positive note, but he's right. And David, it was like he was like caught off guard. Well, how much do we send to Israel? Almost as if he didn't even know that we send billions to Israel, because Piers kept going billions. And he goes, what do you mean? $1 billion? How much? Maybe this, maybe that. It was very hard to watch. So he just completely has a carve out for hypocrisy when it comes to Israel. Why do you think that is? And also, guys, if you're just going to be real, the guy doesn't know what he's talking about. You can see it in the way he delivers what he says, but I'll leave it there. There's so many of them. I mean, I posted that. I said there's so many frauds in the so-called new media. But this clearly matters, and it should matter to anybody with a human, who is a human. Now, here is a report that simply shows you what not every Israeli or even every Jewish person, or rather every Jew and even every Israeli, which is actually the way to say that because there's less Israelis. The point, though, is that this is a real thing, and this is specifically highlighting Jewish supremacy within the Jewish Zionist conversation in Israel. And the point is that this is an undeniable. In my opinion, this is one of the most obvious examples of what we all see as supremacy. Now, people love to make frames about other groups. It exists everywhere. Extremism, supremacy you can find it in any category, guys. And quite frankly, every religion at some level is ultimately supremacist by saying that you go to heaven through this and nothing else. Right? So the point, though, is that some people take that too far. And some people believe that they're better than everybody else. And this is what's important to understand. And it's not only about one thing or the other. In this case, we're talking about what's happening in Israel and the Zionist supremacy that is bleeding and has bled into and almost completely taken over this current administration. It matters to see what they believe and what people will cover up for. Now, as always, for those that somehow don't understand that this is not some kind of a racial, we're talking about Haaretz, by the way, but here is the Israeli human rights group, the leading Israeli human rights group in the world in 2021 that said, and this is what the title of the article is, the podcast, a regime of Jewish supremacy from the Jordan River to the Mediterranean Sea. Now, Zionism overlaps with Christianity. It overlaps with atheism. It overlaps with Judaism. It overlaps with anything that's useful for it, quite frankly, if you understand the point. But what's important to understand is that it also overlaps with Judaism, which means Jewish supremacy, Christian supremacy, or rather just simply understanding it, Zionism supremacy, but through Judaism, through Christianity, whatever it is. And so in this case, and I know people disagree with that, but I wanted to highlight that for this context because these are the so-called hilltop settlers, which are some of the most, I don't even, you could call them any number of names: evil, sinister, vile, malicious. It just doesn't do it justice, guys. These people there's something just wrong here. And this is what we've covered a long time. Now, Ben Gvir, largely, Smotrich as well, they stoke this. And this is what they've used to kind of, bottom line, this is what represents the most radical elements of what is the kind of prophetic religious Zionism perspective. Now, Haaretz says, it's no wonder Israelis want war. Violence has become a source of joy. This was published on August 1st, 2026. Just the main part that I think is important. It says, probably the clearest manifestation of the ostensible joy of violent attacks or violence takes the form of what's referred to as happy Jews. And again, to be clear, this is the people saying this are talking about their Judaism, so it can't be taken as anything else. That's why it's important to realize that whatever we're talking about, including Zionism, supremacy within Judaism is a real part of that, which I've always said. The point here is that understanding that what we're seeing are people that call themselves happy Jews when what they're talking about is using that supremacy to attack people who they believe deserve it. It says in 2015, journalist Avika Novik and Chaim Levinson explained in their report, quote, the complete hilltop lexicon. And the main thing to understand is that the government of Israel absolutely supports this. The IDF come out in force and support them with their own military force regularly. In their report, they hilltop lexicon that happy Jews are those, quote, who are not bound to the archaic conventions and rules of morality and carry out the price tag retaliatory operations against Palestinians with a smile on their face. Tell me that doesn't ring true with what Miller's pushing. This idea that might makes right, and it's not about laws and niceties. It's about who could take it from you. That's what they believe. More recently, the term has come into wide use on settler sites. The Jewish Voice in Hebrew is what the name is, Hakol Hayida, which even styles itself as providing news for happy Jews, which means there are outlets like here in this country that lean into that radical sentiment because it'll benefit them. And because it's clearly as Abby Martin's shown you over the years, unfortunately, the reality is the majority of the population supports this general direction. Not maybe as all as extreme, but that is the truth, guys. Supports the killing of Palestinians, supports the, all the things we've seen. Now that you could argue that's, a majority could be 51%, it could be 90%, but it is clearly a majority. And that's been shown many times over the years. But I also stress that there's a lot of people, not the majority, clearly, but a lot of people in Israel who do not support this. Groups of Orthodox Jews that have huge followings that come out and support in protest of Zionism, in protest of what they're doing in Gaza. That has to matter. Continuing, this group frames itself as news for happy Jews in WhatsApp and Telegram channels such as Hilltop News or the Struggle channel. These groups have thousands of members who freely publish their content under their full name with their phone numbers and exude happiness. In some cases, the reports are firsthand. Quote, happy Jews gave this car the full treatment. Feels very reminiscent to what's happening in this country as well. Hebrew labor you won't find anywhere else, in quotes. As was written with unabashed pride in reference to a violent assault, get this, against 4 women and a toddler from the Bedouin city of Rat. That's what they're praising and laughing about. Who accidentally strayed into the settler outpost last year, and in some cases, indirectly, Arabs report that happy Jews burn the homes of Bedouin villages. We've seen all this. Invitations to carry out pogroms are circulated on colorful, cheerful posters that look more like flyers for an open-air rave than calls to violence. It says, violence is transformed in the army, other ones out there conducting all of the genocide in Lebanon, Gaza, Syria. In the army from being viewed with ambivalence, violence is transformed in the army from being viewed with ambivalence as indisputable, but also something to be ashamed of, but to something that is not only a tool or a goal in military activity, but an organic aspect of the soldier's identity, hating and murdering Palestinians. This is done to them, guys. That's why it's important to think about this. When you have new kids that are out there becoming IDF soldiers, realize that, they're accountable for their actions. So too is anybody else, even if they're in a cult. But realize that there's a different way to understand that, these people may wake up in years looking back going, oh my God, like they were raised their entire lives being told these things. Now it's different today where you have people like us, internet, there's ways to see that there are different paths. And I would argue at some level it is innate. That's my opinion. Like there are certain parts of us, but at the end of the day, it's important to see that. There are people that may not know what they're doing is as bad. It's not that I would even, like, my point is, if I see that, I'm going to criticize them. And I'm not going to go, oh, it's okay, you didn't know any better. That's not what I'm saying. But just as you, as a person, realize that there's another battle than just calling out the person doing it, realizing the institutional manipulation of the education of the children. Same in this country, guys. It's important just to help flavor the how and why of it all, right? But as I've always said, right, people are accountable for their actions, period. Now, I find this very relevant because this is the kind of thing that they're supporting. And it's very obvious in the world and the people like Pete Hegseth that they don't care, guys. That in fact, they support it too. Has to be understood. Now, just one last point before we finish with Iran. Shadow of Ezra shared this clip, and it's how this, like everything else, it's just right in your face, guys. Here is an IDF general saying openly that they want to take control of the battlefield using artificial intelligence so they can target or kill anyone on the planet instantly. He says what they did in Iran and Lebanon was just the beginning, and what they should watch out to what expect from Israel next. Guys, I'm telling you, it's not enough. Okay, everyone in the world seems to be coming to terms with what this is. But if we still just stand back and watch it, if we blink, if we give them that moment, I don't think there'll be another chance to stop this. And I'm never advocating for violence. My point is to try to take action to stop what is clearly developing around us. And it's not even just a technocratic control grid. It's the people who are out there part of it as well. So, and it's not, again, it's bigger than, there's plenty of other things we can get into that go even beyond some kind of surveillance network. But realize what they're salivating about. And then realize the groups that are working with them, like Palantir and Elon Musk and all of the leaders in artificial intelligence.
Autonomy. Other than that, what do you think would be the next breakthrough that would fundamentally change Israel's battlefield advantage when it comes to defense tech, whether it be from the big primes or from the Israeli startups?
It's all in there, because if you will know how to connect the great intelligence that you have today that trace thousands of targets, and by using an AI methods, adjust those targets to an attacking cheap, fast, rapid elements, and manage to control the battlefield in a way that you can operate it in seconds. We saw what Israel managed to do in Iran and in Lebanon, but that's something that we prepared more than a decade. The simultaneously attack that demolished the Hezbollah years of preparation of missiles and rockets and launchers. So I believe that this is the next phase, and hopefully we'll see it sooner than later.
Sorry, I was muted. I'll include, of course, the two different articles that are very relevant to this from 972 magazine. And there's plenty more than that, guys, especially those that relate to other places than Palestine and I mean, anywhere Israel is currently killing people. You have to realize this is what's being built here too. And that's where the flock element comes into play and everything else around it. But again, the articles, this is called a mass assassination factory. And this is Palantir working with Israel to commit genocide. Very clearly. This one was a secondary one, a follow-up, Lavender, the AI machine directing Israel's bombing spree in Gaza. One was more about like buildings and infrastructure. One was targeted to individual people. The same stuff ICE is using, by the way. Now, possibly tomorrow, most likely, that's my plan anyway, I want to get into the conversation of I saw a great video going around of a great speech of a guy I believe was in Minnesota speaking specifically about flock cameras. And I thought to myself, this is interesting. What a perfect intersection right here where you have this guy who my feeling is he's a Democrat because he's talking about how ICE came in and kidnapped their neighbors and it's in Minnesota. And so I kind of feel like that's likely. I could be wrong. But my point is he's eloquently screaming about how flock cameras are bad. And I'm thinking, okay, well, Republicans, most of them seem to be very adamant about flock cameras being wrong and bad and we should stop them. But the question is, will you support him even as you're both fighting the same problem if you suddenly think he's a Democrat? Think worth reflecting on. And we'll get into that more. But the point was that we'll also realize that you're both fighting the same thing. Now, you may have convinced yourself that ICE isn't a problem, but you do seem to have an issue with them using flock to track people. If you suddenly don't have that issue when it happens to be a Democrat, well, then you're just a hypocrite. But I think most of them are starting to see that there's a common thread here, guys, where whatever they're aiming, it's still an illegal surveillance network, a system that's being built around you. It's worth thinking about. And so that's what this relates to, is this massive thing they're building. And it's happening to all of us, not just one side of the paradigm, guys. Make sure I got those for you. All right. Read those if you haven't. It's important. Now, let's start with this. I've just one specific mainstream to again show you kind of what their reporting of this was, following up after the first main one and overlapping this with a few additional points. Now, I really will point back this one and both these, actually. This was the first one on August 1st, where we just discussed what, most had seen going around about the points that stood out as, questioning whether or not this was sort of engineered. This one I thought was even more specifically clear about when the evidence came out that Moroccan intelligence agents were found among the migrants. You have New York Times telling you that there were people that were being told to go. I mean, guys, my main thing, aside from all of that, which is enough, in my opinion, to show that it wasn't organic, not necessarily entirely one thing, but the main thing for me is you don't just get a massive surge all at once for no reason. Like, there's been immigration. Like, this specific point is very relevant for that because it's a closed choke point and people historically have used this to try to go to Europe. The point, though, is that it's never, I'm going to get into the numbers in a second and show you that this surge it's insane. So it's not like everyone just decided one day. Now, you could argue it could be some kind of a social media thing. Maybe somebody started something and let's go, but we would have wind of that by now. They want to believe it was just an organic thing. They just rushed in. So how do they all do it at the same time? Like, they're taking something that is generally happening and using it. That is how this tends to work. That's my opinion, but the evidence is always will include for you to go through. Now, this is Time Magazine reporting 31st about this. Why thousands of Moroccan migrants crossed into the Spanish enclave Ceuta. Spanish territory in northern Africa was left experiencing a humanitarian crisis on Friday after thousands of migrants swam across the border from Morocco, leaving 67 people dead. Spain's Interior Ministry on Friday said close to 50,000 migrants had rushed into Ceuta since Thursday morning. More than 48,300 migrants had already returned. That's crazy. That's like 50,000 people. We're talking, I mean, that's a large increase from what had been generally happening. And on top of that, that 48,300 all just went right back. That's something clearly happened. That's why everybody pointed it out, and why you get this kind of blanket response by all the media corporate that's like, that's false and fake, and seemingly both sides in a lot of ways. But it says the Moroccan ambassador to Spain, Krima Benyach, said at an embassy event that the situation in Ceuta was, quote, not wanted by the Kingdom of Morocco, adding it would prefer legal, orderly, and safe migration. Of course, if they were involved, they wouldn't be like, yep, you got us, as usual. But you could argue that it wasn't done directly from the highest. But I would argue, my gut would tell me that this, as Morocco, as I showed you in the previous show, which that was the title there, or really, there was Moroccan intelligence agents, but I guess not the title, but the point I went into was the decades-long Israel connections to their intelligence. And I went over like 7 different things going over a decade where Morocco and Israel had basically merged with their intelligence, with their military. Same thing happening in this country. And here's just one of them. Morocco and Israel will collaborate on military intelligence systems. And that was after multiple different collaborations and infiltrations. But this point, or wait, what was I? So the point being about the Moroccan leadership, you should question whether or not that they have any agency at all. Like we're seeing in the United States, quite frankly, but other places we know exist like that, where they've been regime changed, like Syria now and other places like that, where they're not organic. They do not have agency. And so in this case, when they're saying we don't want that, you have to question the different parts involved in that and whether they were told to, whether they didn't know what was happening around them. Either way, I think it's pretty clear that there was something weird going on. It says, quote, to give you an idea of the scale, and this is in regard to Spain, it says, for the rest of Spain, this is equivalent to 2% of Ceuta's entire population. That's in regard to Spain. Now it says it's like 1 million people entering Spain irregularly. That's, this like a per capita kind of thing. There's no way that just randomly popped off with nothing guiding it. Now, I'm not necessarily meaning that proves that we know that somebody specifically did. That's what I think. What it shows you is that even like I said, some kind of viral social media post, you could argue might lead to something like this. But again, then that will be something that we would be seeing. Now it says for Ceuta, there were 2,582 land arrivals, compared with 978 during the same period in 2025. That's an 164% increase. Again, same point. Now, it says Spain's Interior Ministry argued an earlier court ruling, which I do think this plays a factor, is behind the latest influx, stating, quote, it believes that human trafficking networks, well, we know who's involved with that, are exploiting a court ruling to encourage the flow of undocumented migrants, mostly young people. Okay, so easily you could make the argument that this is some, let's just pretend that that's exactly what it is. And you have a human trafficking network that took advantage of an opening. That would line up. I don't think that's what is the simple. I don't think that is exactly the case, but just my opinion, but that you could argue that might make sense. But why I think it's relevant, one, is you have the very clear Israel and infiltration into the depths of the Moroccan power structure. So, and then you also have the Epstein connections and different points. So my point, this could be just a way to argue that this is some, like, the networks in place that they know exist were abused. Not necessarily that it was some, so what that would mean to me is that the people who usually abuse those trafficking networks, like the people we're talking about, ultimately use that network to facilitate this action. Just another way to look at it. Again, just an opinion. And so what that means to me, though, if you look at it that way, is that we're talking about the groups that are which I would be U.S. government, Israel, UK, stand out. Now, that's just their regular coverage. Oh, and then BBC simply leaned in a little bit more to that. Just a few points that stand out to me. Spain's prime minister blames traffickers after 60,000 migrants reach Ceuta from Morocco. Now, just a couple added points. It says it's not good. This is what one of the Moroccans said going back. It's not good at all, and it's not fun either. I mean, people are dying here. He says, I beg you, please, if you haven't come yet, don't come. Don't do it. Then why? It's a weird response. That's multiple people that have done that. Why would that be the response? It's almost as if you were tricked into going, and now you're trying to stop you from going, right? It says during the summer months, there is often a big push into Ceuta, typically organized over social media, right? So, but that's the point, is this is unprecedented with the level, with the time frame. So they're taking advantage, in my opinion, of something that has happened to a less degree in the past. Sort of like we saw with Venezuela, the caravan, you know, all the different things, guys. These are being manipulated. Not necessarily that everyone involved is part of something, but that just they're being, you know, manipulated. And it says Ceuta's president, Juan Jesus Vivas, said the arrivals amounted to around 70% of the city's population, which sits at around 83,600, according to the latest local figures. That's just crazy. Like thinking about per capita, you know, Spain's interior ministry told the BBC that its estimates were slightly lower, about 50,000. Speaking on Friday during a visit to Ceuta, Sanchez said the surge was caused by criminal networks purposefully misinterpreting the recent Supreme Court ruling. What has emerged, quote, from our talks with Moroccan authorities is that trafficking mafias took a self-serving interpretation of a Supreme Court ruling, which spread like wildfire. So simply, it ends up being, not to get into the depths of it, because I'm not even sure that's exactly what happened, but but essentially the point is that this ruling opened the door for them to argue that once people went and were like, let's say they were caught like in the water, that they're not then then they weren't legally allowed to send them back to Morocco, essentially. So the bottom line is that if they get them halfway there, that the people then have to stay there, whatever. And that's not ultimately what happened. But they're arguing they misinterpreted it, thinking that they could then send them and get them over there. It's, you know, some kind of trafficking thing. It just doesn't ring true for me, guys. I mean, to me, it sounds like this is the cover for groups that utilize these networks. So, again, including these, this was the show from the first. Just to give you, a couple of the things that, well, this was actually Marjorie Taylor Greene's follow-up. Remember that Thomas Massey came out, and this is one of the documents we looked over in the first show. 2 weeks before migrants from Morocco invaded Ceuta, the GOP passed a bill with $40 million for Morocco and a committee report advising Spanish-administered cities, specifically Ceuta and Melilla, the two that were, people went into, are located in Moroccan territory and remain the subject of Morocco's longstanding claim. I mean, how is that? It's just so, this is the kind of stuff they just want you to ignore because that's what conspiracy theorists say. No, that's just what a logical person would go, wow, that's pretty obvious. That doesn't, you wouldn't argue that proves they did it, but with everything put together, it seems very likely, Occam's razor, that this is what's happening. And then he called it out. Now, here's what Marjorie Taylor Greene adds to it. Republicans paid $40 million of your tax dollars to Morocco to invade Spain. So the fact that she's coming out so, I don't believe that's what this proves, but maybe she's got insight. I get the feeling she's just doing what they do and kind of, that's what we all think. And so they jump out with the statement of it. Or maybe she just thinks it. I'm skeptical. You should be. And it goes, and then they all pretended like borders matter and clutch their pearls like invasions are offensive. Right? I mean, that's the one thing to think about, right? So we're over here going, we are the border, and it seems like they care about that, at least insofar as they can use it for their technocratic agenda, but then they violate the borders of everybody else. Well, you don't need this point to understand that. They do it in Iran, they do it in Syria, they do it literally everywhere they're involved, guys. They don't care about anything they hold sacred for themselves, because frankly, I don't think they even hold it sacred for themselves. I think it's all about the immediate interest and the end point, ends justify the means, that Trump would tell you. Republicans, Democrats are the same, and the Uniparty has put us in $40 trillion debt, and Americans are last. Now, I agree. I'm going to probably talk more tomorrow, or possibly tomorrow, about the America Party and what they're putting forward. Again, I did already talk about it, but I have some concerns. Also, as Dave DeCamp points out, why is the GOP so pro Morocco? Personally, I have a lot of respect for Dave, and I think it matters that he sees the same thing. It is to me, that he sees the Israel-Morocco agreed normalized relations, that U.S. is brokering the deal. And so clearly then what Israel has an interest in would be this. And you already see that, as I have a couple additional points to show. And go through this if you want to see the very clear connections of Israel over the years through Morocco. And this was just one of them. Here is another example to add to what we've already shown you of an Israeli rabbi saying that this will happen, saying this is coming. Now, you could argue, of course, he just, some of them will say he just predicted that Muslims will do what Muslims do. That's the kind of disgusting thing you get from people. The reality to me is that this is something that if you understand their prophetic view of the world, if you understand what Israelis as a government, as the Israeli government has done around the world, whether it's fake, the infiltration, the manipulation of companies, supply chain, this is what they do, guys. And so my argument would be that this is something they want to accomplish. And so they engineer what they want to achieve, especially if they have a reason to, which is Spain supports Palestine or whatever else you want to include. These are just thoughts. Who knows what the real outcome is? Maybe it's about energy and supply chain. But at the end of the day, he seems to know that this is coming and you'll get what you deserve. I just find that relevant.
The Spain won the soccer games now. They became world champion in soccer.
And it's, of course, when they, won and then danced on the Israeli flag. How dare they, right? So let's invade their country.
They celebrated in Spain yesterday and today. How do they celebrate? By walking over the Israeli flag. That's how anti-Semite they are.
Yeah, right. So what's the equivalent of you guys doing that to American flags? Oh, it doesn't matter? Okay, got it.
But I have news for all these anti-Semite Spanish Nazis. Very, very soon, the Arab will slaughter every one of you in Spain. Just a matter of time, 10 years, 20 years, 30 the most. Not one Spanish will be able to stay in Spain. As soon as they get the power, you're going to see Spain, what you see in Paris, stores are burning, riots on the street.
Yeah. And what you need to understand, at least in my opinion, is that is in part being driven by these people. Not necessarily this rabbi, but the Israeli Zionist agenda. And the U.S. Zionist agenda. You have to understand this, guys. And what's interesting about this is you can literally prove that Israel has been doing this and stoking. I've talked about weaponized migration for a long time. But what's interesting is you have Republicans who want to only see it through sort of a Soros open society lens. Well, yeah, that is part of this. But what's crazy is if you actually care to look, you'll find that connects to Israel or both sides of the paradigm. Not just George Soros, but the actual agenda. And there's different group like an Elon Musk type or the Kochs or anybody else. And it's just wild how selective view people can choose to ignore such important factors. But that's what that's what the paradigm does, is we can talk about certain things that are real, but then it gets overused or misplaced or just simply half the story. Again, as I keep telling you, I think people are seeing through it all.
What's going to happen to every European country, England, Greece, Ireland, France, Holland, Germany, Spain, every one of them.
Maybe somebody in the chat can educate the person who just jumped into, by the way, who pretends that we don't say the word Jews, even though I think I've said it like 6 times today. It's just so funny how uneducated people or just dishonest people will try to over focus. And this is what happens, guys. And who's to say whether that person knows that he's wrong or not? That's what I believe anyway. But they will try to make you think it's just the Jews, which, by the way, is exactly what Zionists want from you. So might as well be a Zionist himself, and he doesn't even realize that. That's what's so sad about it, right? But literally just went through the point about Jewish supremacy, but it's just funny. But see, this is also what I keep laughing about, is people that will jump into the chat, the comments, and try to screen people away from the content by, for example, I laughingly pointed this out the other day. Somebody's like, do you really think you could vote your way out of this? I used to like your show. You're just gone now. I'm laughing. I'm like, my God, at least if you want to try to shout people away from our content, at least understand the content. If for anybody that's watched this show from the very first time, I have always been vote nobody. It just kills me. But that's what you get. You get people like that who, yeah, I agree, chat, clown, right? People who don't know what they're talking about or try to think. But at the end of the day, for all we know, he believes that. Maybe he's misguided. Hope he'll stick around. Maybe he'll learn something. But let's continue. This was the other one as well. This is interesting. Now, this goes back. It's not brand new, but then it also got a little check on it that this is from July 8th, which we should know. But this, of course, is funny to me since this account, which is Trust in Trump, this is framed as like a positive thing Trump is doing because obviously Spain is bad because that's what this is. And so ultimately, they lie and pretend this is just came out. It didn't. It was July 8th, which is just how the partisan media, like many of the people we laugh about, continue to do this. Now, what's important, though, just as a tangential point, is that Trump very much did state that he was going to cut off trade with Spain, which appears to not happen the way he said it would. But doesn't that seem relevant? About a month ago exactly, he comes out and says that about something like this. Who knows? Maybe it's not connected, but I find it relevant. So let's play it.
Mark, he's been a great Secretary General of NATO. I'm not happy with NATO because of what they did with Greenland. And I'm not happy with NATO because of the fact that they didn't want to help us with the #1 state sponsor of terror. That's Iran. They were unwilling to help us. Now, in all fairness, I didn't speak to Mark about it. I think if I did, it might have been different. But we didn't need help. But I was really testing. I wanted to see whether or not they'd be there. And the answer is they were. I spoke to Germany. I spoke to France. Spoke to UK. Spoke to Italy. I didn't speak to Spain. Spain is a wasted cause. We don't want to do any trade business with Spain anymore, by the way. I'd like you to cut it off. Spain is a terrible partner in NATO. They don't participate. They don't pay. I don't want anything to do with Spain. Cut off all trade with Spain, please, including visits. Okay, we don't want anything to do. Watch them come running back. Oh, they'll come running back. They treat this man terribly, and this man's a good man too, great man. They're lucky they have him. But Spain doesn't agree to anything, and you shouldn't carry him. I mean, you sort of automatically carry because you're protecting an area, so they're there. So they probably figured they have to protect us, right? But we don't have to, and we don't have to trade with them. I don't want to do any more trade with them. All right? Yes, sir. Take it immediately. Don't even talk to them. They're hopeless.
Yeah, which again didn't happen, it seems. So it's all this. What does that mean to you? Does that mean that he ultimately is not really in control of the policy? I mean, that's a very real thing we should consider right now. But who knows? Right? I mean, I don't think if it doesn't matter what we're talking about, Biden, Trump, it's the same point. We need to understand today that these people are not ultimately calling the shots, even if they believe that. And we can see that. I mean, that's my opinion, but we can see that take Iran for a focus example, which we're going to continue to get into here. It's very clear that you can prove to yourself looking back. It's very clear. He is either being lied to or lying to you. And if the fact that he continues doing it tells me that he's trapped. And who knows, maybe he's starting to see it. Maybe he's realized he's being played. I don't know, but it's very clear, And so the ultimate point here is that this is all about blustering against Spain. The question is why? Well, if you time it and you look at what happened since, it's largely relevant to Israel.
Bad people, because they have everybody else going and paying and working. In Spain, in particular Spain, there are a couple of others, but in particular Spain, they're open about it, they're hostile about it, and let's see how hostile they remain when they call up and they, please, we want to trade with you, sir, we want to trade with you, sir. They make so much money with us, and we're going to see that they make a lot less. I want no business.
God, he's just such a petty person. Like, it's just hard to digest. Like, it's not like, I just don't get why anybody who supports him is not like, you can still be like, I like his policy, but come on, man, be a grown up. Like, don't be a child in the conversation. It makes us all embarrassed. And again, it's just as embarrassing as Biden not being able to tie his own shoes. It's like, this is being done to us. And I really believe that. So I think the point is that there's clear precursors of Spain that make, around it that are very important. Trump orders halt to U.S. trade with Spain over NATO, spending in Iran, but it didn't really amount to that as it looks like. But this is what I wanted to add to it today, which again is actually not even necessarily more to like who's responsible, but I just felt this, it just stood out to me as, it just rings true with the kind of other situations we're seeing in Israel with their own people, in fact. Ask, for example, like I just said, ask the Orthodox Jews that are protesting Zionism how they're treated by the Jewish state, beat up in the streets because they protest Zionism as Orthodox Jews. That speaks for itself. But my point is, in any of these locations, pretending you're fighting, killing Christian populations anywhere that you're going in, acting like you're fighting the evil Muslims in the world. At the end of the day, you have the Moroccan authorities who are supposed to be representing those people who are violently repressing them from coming back into Morocco. Not in every case, but in many that I've seen. And this is weird. Stone for those who returned to Morocco. Those who tried to go ashore were threatened with stones and expelled. That was one of the different articles. Here's a video of it, by the way, which you can literally see him doing. It's crazy. I don't understand this. Like, what is that? What's happening? You know what I mean? Like, it's a very weird thing. They got, and it's getting a lot of attention, but not, as far as I can tell, none in the West. It's weird. Morocco migrants trying to repatriate from Ceuta, Spain's territory in North Africa, faced harsh intervention from the Morocco soldiers at the border. They threw stones and rocks at the immigrants, which drew great reaction. I guess just not in the West. So shout out to Pro Macos, this is where I found it. Why isn't this image in every cover? He's right. The active Moroccan security forces throwing stones at people trying to return. Now, does that suggest, I mean, to me, it simply suggests that they weren't supposed to come back or that they weren't allowed to come back. How do you make sense of that? I think it adds very much to the conversation we're having. Now, lastly, again, just to show you that this is still going around. And this is a guy who's got 225,000 followers. Luke Rudowski shared it, then deleted it. But I just think it's interesting that this is what happens in this conversation on this platform. The promotion of the false information. This has, what is it, let's see what it is now. 150,000 views. The other one was a million something, right? Which, if you remember, the point is this is an image that somebody just made. It's not even accurate because this didn't happen now. This happened back in 2020, where Donald Trump says that he recognizes Moroccan sovereignty over the Western Sahara, which is not Melilla and Ceuta. It's more sort of north to the northwest. So why did this come out? Well, because somebody wanted to use it. They tricked somebody else. Maybe somebody tricked Luke, for all we know. I don't know how. I don't know where it started, but it's shared and it's not accurate because this actual statement is from 2020. Here's Donald Trump's recognition of that very place in 2020, and then Israel did the same in 2023. Just to reiterate that. So this point is only about recognizing how many people are constantly trying to bog you down with fake information, and not even like fake, but like tangentially unimportant that's represented as current. Like, why do you think that is? It's either for clicks and reach, just to gain from lying on the platform that allows you, that promotes lying, or to lead you astray from the main point. I think it's the latter, quite frankly. And I'm not saying this person's choosing to do that, but this just ends up happening when people share it without doing their due diligence, which is also the point that has to matter. But I think that it's, look it up. It's going around still. Now, this is one of those other posts. Cernovich is trying to gaslight around this, or rather he goes, the Israelis are being stupid. Optics make it look like they're planning the invasion of Spain. I get the joke, but never make propagandist against yourself. Now, he posted this more than once. He posted underneath somebody else, like literally calling out the invasion of Spain. It's kind of like a Patrick Bet David moment, really. But Anya says, decades of Israelis lying are crumbling in real time, or Israeli lies. For years, we've been told Israel is fighting them over there, right? Muslims over there, so that we don't have to fight them over here. That's the foundation of the Israeli security relationship with the West. Now, at least in one example, and plenty of others we could see if we choose to look, we see that Israel will in fact gladly coordinate with the Muslim allies, the Moroccan kingdom, to flood the West with migrants just to prove a point and settle a centuries-long rivalry with Spain. It's important, guys, because this is the reality of this. As even somebody mentions in the chat, what is it called? The Kalergi plan, or really the replacement theory concept. It's something that is very real in a general sense about people trying to do this, largely from a Zionist perspective about the prophecy of the West collapsing before that brings on the end times. So what's interesting is that becomes something that is used against the Democrats, against Muslims, when in reality it ties back to something very different. But what's interesting to me is that what we're seeing here is the example of ISIS. Like not the same Morocco. My point is that Israel will work with the very people that they claim they're fighting, and in many cases lead the groups. That's what Mohammed bin Salman admitted about the different groups around them, the ISIS, Al-Qaeda, al-Sham, that ultimately they were led by people who didn't really believe the ideology, but led people to believe they did, but then ultimately that they lost control of the leading elements. Those are statements he's made more than once. Or another one he's made, by the way, is that I hope that the Yemeni children will shiver when they hear the name Mohammed bin Salman. So he's going to continue killing children. So he hopes they shiver when they hear his name. That's a real quote, by the way. Anyway, the point being that this all leads back to a very real, manipulated situation where we have people who have a literal prophetic end times, view of exactly this situation, and necessitating the fall of the West in this exact way. In fact, yeah, so this is perfect. I hadn't even started Iran yet. Let me play this clip really quickly. I believe I still have it. Let me see if I can find it really quickly. Let's see. It was, oh man, that's frustrating. It was a clip that Adam Green put together, a compilation simply showing, and it doesn't necessarily, not necessarily people in the government, but prominent rabbis who were just outlining exactly that. And I don't remember what I had it under, though. Oh, well, damn it. Oh, well. Well, it's important because I think the point is that there's a very real belief from a religious perspective, or just I argue both, but also Zionist, which I don't think is the same thing, that this is what needs to happen. But realize that you have people like Pete Hegseth, who told the U.S. military, repeatedly admitted by others, that this was Armageddon, fighting the religious war, and he believes the same thing, or maybe a different Christian version where it's the reverse. But either way, guys, realize that they know that these Israeli Zionists believe that the West has to collapse to bring, and they're fighting for that agenda. How in the world is that America first? Insane. But I agree. So if I find that, I'll try to play it. But let's finish, or let's end with an update on Iran, which I do think is very important. Not necessarily important in the sense of everything else, but just the what this continues to reveal. And I mean, you can come whatever you think. Even at the end of the point, I guess the point is you don't know what this shows us. That's what's so confusing about it. Is he lying? Is he being lied to? Does he even know what's going on? Is he senile? Is Israel? It's just crazy. This weird cycle. In fact, I'll even start with this. I'll read it again because it's just hilarious to me. Where was that? Godfrey says, Trump's waffling on Iran has to be a glitch in the Matrix. It's so absurd, it doesn't feel real. Like the worst version of Groundhog Day on loop. It's just hilarious. Redundantly, perfectly hilarious. Like it's exactly the point, right? It's like Groundhog Day on loop is perfect. And it does make sense. I've been saying it the entire time. I mean, it ultimately might at the end of the day, like if he just doesn't have any other options, and so that's his best he can do, that makes sense. But with limited information, it just doesn't line up. And it's so absurd. Most people don't even realize this is actually happening every couple of days, that they're standing back thinking it's just that same conversation being recycled. No, he's literally doing this same weird dance over and over. And you can prove that he was lying when you go through it. It's just crazy to me. So yet again. And so to start with this, it's just hilarious to me. So if you watch yesterday's show where we went through this from yesterday and the day before, it was very clear that what was happening, as usual, was that Trump lied about what was going on. And Iran was like, we're not even dealing with you right now. We're talking to Oman. You're not included in this. We're not negotiating with you right now. And then this is what Jesse Waters put out. That is, with all the information we proved, Jesse Waters comes out with this. And that's what I said. For those who watched the show last night, you'll get a kick out of this. The leader of the red light, holy crap, guys. Here it comes.
Called off strikes on Iran at the last second and has announced all parties have agreed to final points of a deal. Okay. Just so you know, as of today, everyone knows that's not true. It's just like every time. And Jesse Waters just shamelessly repeats what the team says. And very smugly always, like, turns out we won again. You know, it's like what? Over and over and over. He'll do it again tomorrow. And they somehow grow and reach in a false AI-controlled world that we live in. But that's embarrassing.
We just made a great settlement of the war with Iran.
They won again. Did you hear? They won.
And we're going to be subject to finalization of documents. We should get done over the next few days. Got it. We'll probably have a signing maybe in Europe.
Trump told the Post a deal is pretty much wrapped up, and top brass in Iran have approved a draft agreement.
Oh, yeah. It's called the MOU. They signed it already. Anything else? Not true.
Terms extend the ceasefire, immediately reopen the strait, and in 60 days, Iran has to downgrade their uranium to zero.
Okay, so what's funny about this? That's what they want. Very clearly, just an extension, essentially, at least the first part of it. Extend the ceasefire. Now, it's very possible that may end up being somewhat of what happens within Iran and Oman. What I believe he's doing is very desperately trying to just yell out things around what they're doing. And that if part of it happens, they can just see it'll make Trump look like he's right. But realize Iran, I don't believe it's even in the cards that they're going to go in the direction of the nuclear talks anymore because they don't have to. And the same thing with the Strait. They're in control, as everyone can see. Even though Trump keeps lying around it all. I'm in control and we can do this. Well, nope. It's very clear that Iran is in control. Guys, if you haven't looked, look. It's very clear. And then on top of that they are arguably going to dictate some kind of toll dynamic. And that is what they're currently discussing with Oman on the record. But Jesse Waters will break it down for you.
We don't lift the blockade until the uranium's vaporized. And we don't unfreeze any of their money until they behave. For weeks, we haven't heard a...
Oh, do you hear that, though? Their money? Funny how that became the reality once Trump needed it to be the reality. Or before it was, they paid, Obama paid them all this money, and Biden gave the money. Well, same thing. It was money they seized, as I've been telling you my entire life. So, but funny that Trump just gives them the go-ahead. Oh, no, now we'll tell you it's money that's ours or that's theirs, even though that contradicts what we've been saying the entire time without blinking. Corporate media.
Keep from the gay Ayatollah, but
now
he's coming out.
You realize that's for all we know, who knows, possible. But do you realize where dumb points like that come from? Something that they push out there from the State Department propaganda, from what Trump said, some narrative they used they thought was going to influence the conversation. There's nothing to that. And who knows? Maybe, like I said, I don't know, and neither do they. The bottom line is this is what you get from Fox News. Tucker Carlson and the idiots out there who act like that is what you should be doing, calling them the Democrats like we're in kindergarten.
Has the Supreme Leader approved this deal, sir?
I understand the answer is yes.
I understand the answer is yes. So you know what he does that for? So he can always blame somebody else. Well, I was told. Somebody was relayed to me. If I was there, we would have gotten it done.
Nights have really gotten the Iranians' attention. The USS Michael Murphy launched dozens of Tomahawk missiles, hitting Iranian surveillance, communication systems, and air defenses along the southern coastline.
Yeah, I can't verify what they actually hit, and neither can they. And the bottom line is, well, I mean, in regard to probably Jesse Waters, the point is that the U.S. right now seems to be spinning out. Bombing, like, if you understand what Iran did before all of this, which you can go back and look at our coverage, look at Robert was saying well before we got here, including putting all of their ships, but a lot of their naval ships in canals under the mountain so they wouldn't be bombed, which is now why they still have a navy, which you can prove, by the way, since they're still in control of the strait. The point is they prepared for all of this. That's why they decentralized. What they did was planning for all of this. So what they get is the U.S. bombing what they think they know and they're not successful over and over, which is being relayed by people who know what they're talking about and people that are actually inside the conversation and leaked information. Then you get Iran almost, and it's getting worse every day, where you're seeing them respond and bombing and not having any deterrence, having drones flying freely over U.S. bases. Guys, it's pretty damn clear that they're either letting all this happen for some unknown outcome, or they have completely, they're out of what they need. They are completely depleted was the word I'm looking for. But I'm not going to pretend to know for sure. But the evidence speaks for itself. But Jesse Waters will just read off what the State Department wrote. He's the guy, he's fighting the deep state while reading what the deep state tells him to say about how the deep state operates in the deep state.
These were the most ferocious and devastating airstrikes since we ended major combat operations in April. Tonight was going to be even worse.
We
were hitting them very hard for the last 3 days. We're going to hit them even harder tonight. They knew that. We told them.
To what end? What are we talking about here? Didn't you say you won 40 times already? What are you hitting them for? If you won, take it. If you have to bomb them, then you didn't win. But I don't need to tell you this. But this is how, objectively stupid this is, that a child can see that his narrative here and his narrative there don't reconcile. And yet he just keeps going. You realize his own people laugh at him for this. They have to, or at least they're embarrassed because they don't want to laugh about it. Everybody can see that.
Exactly what we were going to do. We explained it exactly because they had no Navy, they had no Air Force, they had no...
how can you even say that when you can clearly see that if you want to pretend they're not controlling the strait, you can see that they're acting in the strait, and they're not speedboats and drones, guys. They are clearly capable. Otherwise, this wouldn't be happening. And yet they just keep lying. There is no better word than desperate. I've been saying that since the beginning because it's been pretty clear to me.
Any weapons of detection, they had nothing. And so we could tell them exactly what there wasn't a thing.
Okay, so nothing is what hit those bases, right? Nothing is what hit Kuwait. Nothing is what's been flying over your bases without being stopped.
Thing they could have done about it.
It wasn't just these airstrikes that put the pressure on. The president warned Iran he would just keep bombing them every night until they signed.
Yeah, because that's just normal. We're just going to keep killing people. No big deal. It's the case like in junior high. I just can't even take it anymore. The point is it goes on like that forever and just repeats what Trump said is absolute smug certainty. I genuinely don't understand why even people that support Trump watch somebody like that. Well, I do, because it just gives you shameless high-fiving of media coverage about, well, we're so great and Trump's the best and we're going to win. And it's all going your way, even though none of it's true. And you can see that in real time. But I guess people like being lied to. That is the reality of where we are. Now, what's funny is, the patriotic blonde simply says, who used to support Trump, meanwhile, the Trump announces the war has been won again for the 234th time. It's just because he does. He basically says, we won. Not we won, but sort of we had the major success. And now it's kind of, I forget the exact verbiage. You just heard it. It was that, we basically now are beyond, the way he framed it was, this was essentially the hill that they've gone over. Now, as Patrick says, Trump has no cards. I agree. Now, this is Hormuz report saying a source close to Iran's top negotiator on the 2nd says Tehran viewed the latest U.S. threats as simply pressure tactics to force Iran to negotiate. They didn't cave. But they're in no rush to talk, believing time is on its side and that Donald Trump has no strategic cards left to play. I agree. Now, they outline the vulnerabilities. It's their opinion, but it's all the stuff we talk about, the petroleum reserve, missile defense, political pressure. It's all the stuff that we can see, and they're floundering. Hormuz letter also reports, and this isn't confirmed, but this was going around as reports, and even the U.S. states arguably that they were bombed. But when you look at it, it turns out that the reports largely are that they were deterring a U.S. ship and then it landed in the water. But it was that Iran has launched an anti-ship cruise missile toward basically in the strait, and the reports were a U.S. backed tanker essentially. And so this is what we see in the past, where that becomes they're bombing ships, when the reality is you're taking the route that is not allowed. Even if you didn't give them the authority, it is what it is right now. And so you're choosing to go a route where they're going to do that, when you could just take the route so you're choosing to make it an issue so you can argue they're bombing ships, when in reality, they weren't bombing ships. They were bombing the water to threaten you back from doing it. That's what happened last time as well, by the way. Specifically in the general sense, there's been examples of them bombing ships, yes. And that's always been in a context where there is not an ongoing agreement and that they're continually being, like when they're bombing them in Iran while claiming you're violating their memorandum. Now, here's what Trump had to say. And this is where it gets really silly, guys. This is at the end of yesterday. So and you already know this since we reported it, and we already basically predicted exactly where this was going to go. But here's what he said, telling you that today, afternoon, which right now it's past that point, that they're going to negotiate. We're going to begin negotiating again tomorrow. As far as I can tell, that's not happening. Let me know if you're getting a note about that happening immediately today, right now. Last I checked an hour ago or half ago, Iran was publicly going, this is crazy. We're not speaking to them. There is no negotiations right now with the United States. There is with Oman, not really a negotiation, but working out a deal of control of the strait. That is going on right now. But here's what Trump had to say yesterday.
By Iran.
In case you didn't hear it, we played that earlier, but it's the second part that I want to get to. But he says, and this is what I think is actually accurate. We were asked by Saudi Arabia, Qatar, so basically Iran and Oman are working on figuring this out for their control of the strait. And everyone seems to be okay with that, except people that are afraid to look like they lost. And I shouldn't say okay with it, but willing to accept it because we want to be done with this. And so Saudi Arabia reaches out to the maniacs and says, just stop, just hold on for a minute. Let this work itself out, right? That's what I think happened. And then because this is hurting. This is immediately, not just the bombs, but the strait's hurting a lot of different people. But that is having a serious effect on Saudi Arabia. They've had an oil infrastructure, Aramco bomb. They're not able to, it's in addition to that in general, it's just hurting their economy, but same with a lot of these countries. And so the point is that I think, in my opinion, they simply said, just stay out of it. And so then Trump says Iran asked too. And I think he knows that's not true. But it's possible that Saudi Arabia said, hey, Iran asked us, and played Trump to get him to back down. Any of those make sense to me, frankly, because I think that they're literally being laughed at. But my gut would tell me if I had to pick that it was simply Trump, just like he's done 70 times already, saying Iran reached out and said they want to make a deal. And that's not what happened.
We were all set to go just about at this time right now. And it would have been a massive attack. We're all set to go, but when the allies ask to call it off, you got to sort of say, well.
So right there, he seems to admit by accident that it was the allies, but not Iran. Because he didn't say allies in Iran right there. He said when the allies asked. And if you listen to the first part again, it feels like he chooses to include Iran after a second of thinking about it.
By Qatar and by Iran. We were all set to go just about at this time right now, and it would have been a massive attack. We were all set to go, but when the allies asked to call it off, you got to sort of say, well, let's see. And the reason they asked is that
you got to sort of say, well, let's see. It's like he can't even commit to his own stance. It's just so strange.
I think there's a deal. There's a deal on Hormuz, and then there will be a deal on the nuclear, or
the deal on Hormuz, in case you weren't paying
attention. The denuclearization of Iran. I call it the denuclearization of Iran.
Wait, what was that? What was the name you made up for it, Trump?
Denuclearization of Iran. Then there will be a deal on the nuclear, or you might call it the denuclearization of Iran. I call it the denuclearization of Iran.
Oh, you call it what it's called? Very cool. Very smart of you. You know, I also call this a table. That's magic. I'm the one that made up that it's a table. I work on a table. That's what I invented. You know what I mean? Like, what is wrong with this guy? The denuclearization of Iran is literally what you would call a group being denuclearized, because it's their only one word for it. I call it that. I'm the one. It's like a tick. It's like an impulse for this person. And it's worth calling out, because it speaks. I mean, think about how alarming it is that that's the kind of nature this person has. And he's that leader, ostensibly, of this country.
So we're holding it. We'll just see. We can do it anytime we want. But
right. So I can bomb whenever. So let's make a deal, but I could bomb whenever I want. You know, it's the same. That's why Iran doesn't take this seriously, because even when they actually go, no, we're making a deal, they murder their religious leader. They bomb their negotiation team. So even when they really do have statements that make it seem like they want to, they're planning to kill people. So now when he goes, well, maybe not. Well, never mind. You know, it's not even worth getting into. Even, you know, this is everyone that's dealt, with, I mean, the U.S. government, in my experience, in my living memory, but especially the last few administrations, like especially 9/11 forward, to be more clear. But again, it's really just the history of this government, guys.
We're asked by the three primary groups. We're also asked by Iran very strongly, actually. They said
very strongly. They really, really, really asked. They begged me. He does it every time.
To make a deal. Now, you know, I don't know what they say, because a lot of times they'll say that to me, and then they'll go out and say, we don't know what he's talking about.
Okay. Now, I've brought this up before. I mean, that's one of the possibilities, isn't it? But my question is always, if that is the case, why does he keep believing them? You see, like, I mean, after maybe 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, maybe 7 times, 15, 20, you're going to just keep going. Iran said, we're going to make a deal, and then yell it out loud for them to go, look at this clown. He bought it again. That could be. I mean, look at what they've gone through. Like, they don't see them as an honest partner. Guys, they're not an honest actor in this. They've proven that. So why would they treat them as an honest actor? That just seems logical to me. But again, who knows? He could be making that up too, guys. But just think about the possibilities. And either way, he's either being lied to or lying to you, and just weirdly continuing the cycle.
Obviously, they don't want to be attacked. And they knew the extent of the attack, because they saw it forming.
So you could argue that his own hubris and this weird, like, really incorrect belief of the supremacy of this power allows him to, well, that we know they don't want to be attacked. Well, guess what, guys? I mean, nobody wants to be attacked, but they've prepared for this. They've proven more than anything since April, February, that they are not afraid of these attacks. They don't want them to happen, because it's going to kill civilians. It's going to kill their infrastructure. They're going to lose money. But they prepared for this. They've been telling the world they prepared for this. Like I said before February 28th, they went to the UN and said, they're going to bomb us. And if they do, this is what we're going to do. They knew it. So they're not afraid to be bombed. Pretty simple. They don't want it, clearly. I don't think anybody would, but ultimately it's clear that they're prepared for this. So if he believes that that's all it takes, a threat of our power, and that's really how he sees himself, maybe he is in his own weird hamster wheel of, you know, he's lying to himself, if you will. I can't tell.
Well, now what we're doing is we're talking to them in the form of a negotiation. It begins tomorrow afternoon.
As opposed to what?
And we'll see if it's true. I'd love to do that. Save a lot of lives.
Oh, yeah.
Save a lot of
right. It'll stop me from killing children tomorrow. It'll be great.
Unnecessary power, to be honest with you. It'll take many, many years to ever build it back. If it could them in the form of of a negotiation. It begins tomorrow afternoon, and we'll see if it's true. I'd love to do that, save a lot of lives, save a lot of unnecessary power, to be honest with you.
You'll save a lot of unnecessary power. That's what he said. I'm just trying to piece that together.
It'll take many, many years to ever build it back. If it could, I don't think it would be even buildable back.
Maybe he meant that by stopping, you won't lose that power. I think that's kind of what that meant, I think.
So we had an attack that would be the biggest attack since World War II.
That's what everybody jumps on. It's like, okay, but it didn't happen. So what are you saying? Trump, we said it would have been the worst. This guy's been blustering his entire life. Like, it's such a weird thing for people to focus on. And really, who focused on it were the ones who wanted to go, we're the best. It would have been so bad, and Iran was so scared. The Nick Sorters and Benny Johnsons and Jesse Waters. Literally what you got from these people. And then 20 seconds after that, frankly, before it, you already knew he was lying, but they still went with it.
And it would have been disastrous for them. And they didn't want us to do it. And
well, I mean, ask yourself this. How would it have been disastrous for them? Another bombing campaign. You've done plenty of them. Why would this one be different? Are you saying that you've chosen not to bomb places that would have made a disaster until now? You see my point, guys? Deductive logic is their worst enemy because they just ramble and don't think people can smartly piece together the obvious inconsistencies. Pattern recognition, guys, it's obvious.
And frankly, Saudi Arabia didn't want it either. They thought that a deal is imminent.
Yeah, Saudi Arabia knows they're suffering. All of these countries are suffering because of you and Israel. And you're not even protecting them. That's the whole point of all of this. And so that's why they're not going along with it. They're slowly making their own things happen, guys, because you're not going to sit back and just be a battering ram to defend what, that's what's happening. Because every time, as I've been pointing out, even though they have the legal justification to return bombing in the United States because the United States is bombing in Iran, thank God they haven't fallen to that level. They're just turning around and bombing bases elsewhere. I just always think that's relevant. The group that they want you to believe is frothing at the mouth to murder you for your beliefs chooses not to bomb when they have the legal opening to. It just speaks for itself, guys.
And the deal is imminent, having to do with the Hormuz Strait and also ultimately the denuclearization of Iran. So when I hear that, I say, well, do we want to go and be this severe? Now, there's a group of people that would like me to just do it.
Who's that exactly? Yeah, all the people that we know, all the maniacs, the Lindsey Graham types, just bomb them out the face of the earth. Like, these are supposed to be the leaders. They're just maniacal sociopaths, guys. I mean, it's just very clear. That's Israel, clearly.
There's another group of people that does not want me to do it.
She's such a child. There's a group that wants me to, and a group that doesn't want me to. I don't know. I'm confused. That's just something about the way he does that. It does not give you confidence, guys. At least not me. But it's like he tries to play into like this like bumbling kind of like, I'm just doing the best I can. I mean, I'm just an observer. They're going to tell me and I'm going to tell, well, they should listen and the bombing will hurt them. I don't know why they want that. I'm like, I'm starting to think more and more these days that just is, it's not some ploy. He's just lost in it. Either way, continuing on the oil part of this, I think is relevant too. And this is from the second. Trump, first of all, the Real Fly put this out, a post from Trump saying the Secretary of Energy will issue an order today that results immediate production of 50,000 barrels of oil per day, increasing offshore oil production in California by 550%. Goodbye, Santa Barbara beaches is what they framed it as. But the point is, Trump put this out saying that's going to happen. Now, what this person, Carolina Lion, frames it as is Trump is belatedly realizing having Bessent just artificially push down oil prices doesn't actually fix the underlying supply problem. Now, who knows if they're accurate in that framing? I just wanted to point out that we need to understand it's beyond question that they're like, it's not even like they're hiding it. They're manipulating the oil markets for their own benefit. Like, for example, dumping oil that they onto the market that would otherwise be from reserves that won't be replenished in the same way, taking Venezuelan oil and doing the same. And it doesn't actually put us back on a right path. It's an illusion. I've been saying that from the beginning. But on top of that, what she's pointing out, or I think she's basically saying, that Bessent coming out and artificial, which we all pointed out. Wait, Aramco gets bombed and the price goes down? Like, okay, we're being played. And so the point was, just by playing the number doesn't reach the people that need oil. So now they're rapidly trying to get it out. Now, maybe that was already happening. So who knows if that's, just them choosing to frame it in a way that makes them look stupid. I just want you to remember, guys, that they are playing people with the markets right now, literally publicly manipulating these things for their own benefit at your expense. But on top of that, Trump comes out today and says, this was 9:50 this morning. I'll just read it. It says, Mike Wirth, chairman and CEO of Chevron, just gave an interview with the fabulous Maria Bartiromo all of the reasons that his company is doing so well. He says the only thing he conveniently forgot to mention is that without the genius, foresight, strength, and stability of the Trump administration. Don't you love how he talks about himself that way? It's disgusting. The oil industry and the country itself would be dead. You can decide to, you can just laugh at that for yourself if you want. But the point is, as an example, they threw Mike and Chevron out of Venezuela, but now they're back. Yeah, remember that, by the way, when they threw out the corporations that were sucking it dry and selling them out to foreign countries, and then they used that oil to benefit other countries in the South? That's all gone now because they kidnapped Maduro, and they went right back to corporate capitalism, destruction. Not that those are inherently bad, all government is to me, but that it is, what it represents is their exploitation of Venezuela, not the benefit of the Venezuelan people, which is what they promised they were going to do. If you fell for that for the umpteenth time, maybe you should reflect on that going forward. But it says that goes for other oil companies as well. Get your consumer retail oil prices down now. That's like the third time he's done that. Anybody hearing the same old criticism? Imagine if Biden was like, get your prices down. Communism, socialism, right? It only matters when you frame it one way. It's just the same manipulation, guys. And why does he want it down? Because he wants it to look better. Well, if it doesn't represent the reality, why would they do that? They're going to take it on the chin for the team? That sure seems familiar. Here's Randy Fine, though, telling you why it's important to just tough it out, guys. Right? Because as usual, you get the kind of argument that is, do you want your family to die? Or do you want the oil prices up for a week or two? It's like, whoa, hold on. Those are my only two choices? Extra high oil prices that you promised weren't going to be the case, or killing my family? Well, then I take the oil, I guess. It's like, that's the kind of stupid thing you get from people like this, the hardcore Zionists like Randy Fine, who openly advocates for the death of children in Gaza. Which is that, like he says, you going to wait for Iran to bomb our country? Or are you just going to tough it out with some oil prices? It's like, that's not the full picture there, guys. But you know that. I mean, that's what's sad, is that I think this only works for people that are on the team or blindly supporting of the Zionist agenda. Average people with 2 brain cells are going to go, well, that's stupid. How about we just don't, how about we find a middle ground and don't realize it's not nuclear holocaust or $5 gas? That's not the way this works out. But that's what they want you to think.
Americans, though, who have watched this back and forth, who have watched the president say there are strikes on the horizon, and then pull that back. And we've done this dance several times, yes, sir. So what do you say to Americans who are concerned watching that and who are watching the impact here at home? They are facing the burden of higher cost and watching this drag out.
His answer is, we don't care about American suffering. Fight for Israel. You can interpret this next answer how you want. That's exactly what it comes across to me. I don't care if you want to pretend that it's because Iran's so bad. What you are saying is that we need to do this even when it is at your expense. That's not what you promised. That's not even what you're currently framing it as. That's what's happening.
Yeah, look, I would say that we've been dealing with this not for a few months, but for 47 years.
Yep. Same old thing. And remember that in 53 is when they illegally overthrew Iran. And then in 70 or 47 years ago is when they took it back. So if you want to pretend it started then, you're just ignoring the fact that they started it with an illegal regime change. These people are children. They know what they're doing. They know they're lying about it. And 47 years also ends up admitting that it wasn't an imminent threat. So let's cycle back through all the lies, and it's worth, you could write 40,000 books about the lies they've sold in the last 6 months.
We've been dealing with these issues with Iran. And what people need to understand is this. Iran was spending huge amounts of money to build an intercontinental ballistic missile. A
missile system as defense, like the U.S. government does all the time. These arguments they make about how these oligarchs spend their money on the military and don't help their people. And then Trump goes, we can't have daycare and Medicare and services, military. It's like they don't even listen to themselves, or they're just too desperate to know what to say right.
intercontinental ballistic missile only had one purpose. It was to deliver a nuclear weapon to the United States.
Or, just missiles like the rest of them have. They could deliver any payload like the rest of them have. I mean, come on, guys. Like this is lazy. Because they're evil bad guy. They have butter knives. We can't allow that because they could use that. It ends up being whatever the rationale. It's because they're bad. Okay, well, what's the law say? Right? If you're going to allow Saudi Arabia and North Korea and everybody else, what are we talking about here? It's only because they know they don't have it and they know they're not seeking it. At least they haven't, which you can prove, which the U.S. intelligence showed, which the IAEA admitted over and over and recently right before this, and Witkoff lied about. I've covered all of it. Too bad people like Tucker and Alex don't cover the same, because then people would actually know about it.
They had all the missiles they needed to hit anywhere they wanted in Israel and the Middle East. That is a risk that the president has said we cannot face.
Okay, the risk, the legal reality of what they're allowed to have is a risk they can't allow. Okay, well, then that same logic, Iran could say, well, your legal allowance to missiles is something I can't allow, so we're going to wipe you off the map. Isn't that the same logic? Yes, it is. The only difference is they believe they can do whatever they want, and they believe nobody else can do the same. That's Zionist, supremacist mindset, guys. That's what it is.
And as much as it stinks to pay an extra $1 a gallon of gas, which I think will come down fairly shortly.
Nope, they've been saying that for 5 months. And it's not, because it's still happening, so it won't come down. But the point is, it's more than that too. And they promised this wouldn't be happening. Not just not the war or more spending or more government or every other Maha promise, but they promised that prices would be down. Not just back to normal, like the Strait of Hormuz Iran conversation, where they're fighting to bring you back to where they started and acting like they won. They promised from day one, lower grocery prices, lower gas. They lied, guys. It's not even like they made a mistake. They didn't have any intention to follow through with almost any of it.
Think about the damage of a nuclear bomb going off in Washington or New York or Miami. That is the risk that we simply cannot face.
Great. So by that same point, you can do that with everything, right? Well, Russia could nuclear everything. So this logic, this policy has to go through. Sorry that your prices are 65 times higher. Russia could kill everybody. Okay. Is that not the same play? I mean, it doesn't change that it's not where we are, even if it's possible. That's not. So the argument is, as long as we have enemies, then your interest comes second. Is that America first, Randy Fine? No, it's the exact opposite. But secondarily, you're the one causing those threats. Maybe if you weren't bombing countries and invading people's territory and have bases every country in the world, maybe they wouldn't have that. The point is obvious. They create what they use to ignore you. Pretty simple.
And that is the risk that the president is dealing with right now.
But how much longer can Americans continue to carry that burden?
Until we win. I mean, look.
Right? So shut up and take it until we get what we want. You can take it. This is a guy who does not care about voters, guys. He does not care about you. If he cared about people not liking him and voting him out of his position, he wouldn't be going, shut up and take it. That's not what people wanting your vote do. So you can take that as either he doesn't care about being reelected or that he doesn't worry about being reelected.
What does winning look like then?
Winning looks like no nuclear weapons program and an open Strait of Hormuz.
Oh, okay. So exactly what was the case before. And if she was a real journalist, she would say that.
And the president continues to degrade Iran. One of the things the media doesn't cover is the state of play inside Iran. Iran is in an economic collapse. Their military has collapsed. And they are the...
It's so hard to listen to these clowns. Yeah, that might have gotten people in the first few weeks. You just can't keep saying that. That was exactly what Trump said 3 days into this, right? How is it still happening? Randy Fine, how are they still bombing things? How are they still defending the strait? Nobody buys this. That's it, guys. If you believe it, you're, truly, completely uninformed about basic realities that even the U.S. government elements in the Pentagon will tell you, or you just don't care. There's really no way around it. And that's how clear this is. It's like the sky being blue. You can sit there and call it black or whatever, whatever. It's a bad example, something that you can call it whatever you want. But everyone's going to look and go, but it's not, though. But you'll get the occasional person that's going to agree with you without looking. You're going to get the occasional person that will agree with you because they want something from you. But most people are going to go, but it's blue, man. I can see it. And that's where I think we are. I think it's very clear. Now, Patriotic Blonde on the 3rd, 8:59 a.m. Remember what she said a second ago? He won for the 247th time. Well, Today, Trump says the deal with Iran is close. She goes, I'm sorry, didn't he just declare victory over the war yesterday? It's like, that's what's so stupid about this, if you're paying attention. Now, I think these clips actually overlap. Let me see.
Planned strikes against Iran, as he says a deal is close. According to the president, talks will resume today.
Nope, they didn't.
Aimed at finalizing an agreement on the Strait of Hormuz.
Okay, but wait a minute. Didn't he just say yesterday that was already happening? Yeah, he did.
Trump says he was asked by Qatar, the UAE, and Saudi Arabia to hold off as...
Oh, wait. Iran was left out. I guess Trump just inserted that when he wanted people to think Iran was actually asking him things. Like I said, you could feel that he was like, and Qatar and Iran, like, that'll work. It just didn't even report it to them.
Diplomatic efforts play out.
We had an attack that would be the biggest.
And then this is what you saw. Yeah, good enough anyway. There's general points are already very clear, but this is the report of the next day, right? So he said that yesterday, but the third is Trey, I believe, from Fox News, reporting that. And it's laughable, guys, because it's incongruent. Okay. So here he is today, later in the day, saying that Iran called and begged him. So remember, this is already now, we've gone through the day. Iran has very publicly laughed at this and said, that's not true. We're not talking to you. And there's been numerous things from their points on Twitter going, making fun of him. It's what happens because it's really hard not to at this point. So he sees that and you just heard, maybe they're lying to me. Why would they? They don't want to be bombed. Okay, so all this is taken past now. So now it's today, and he's heard them deny what he told everybody was about to happen. And this is what he says again. He doubles down and says, it goes from they asked me to make a deal to the truth is they begged me. So you can look at this one of two ways. Either he now knows they lied to him and then lies over it to try to push in that they begged him to, I guess, insult them, but all it does is make him look stupid, really, because it won't happen, right? Or again, there's the opaque other side of this where, why would he continue to do it knowing that they said not? Either Israel's making him or he's got some other agenda in there that we're not seeing. But this is truly what he just said today after everything.
So they called me and they said, please don't attack. We'll make a deal. That's the real.
That just went from Saudi Arabia and Qatar saying that to now Iran called him directly and said, please don't, please, I'm begging you.
Truth. And everyone knows it. And who wouldn't call? And they found out through leaks and sleazebags, a lot of.
Now he deviates into leakers are terrible, because you get running from the obvious point that nobody believed. Everybody believes that.
Sleazebags, leakers. Leakers should be put in jail. They have to strengthen up the laws for leakers. But in this case.
Well, some cases they're called whistleblowers, Trump, and it means they're exposing a crime. But you guys don't care about that.
Case leakers helped because they said the severity of the attack. And
you realize that the claim that it was going to be worse than World War II largely came out after it had already been clear that it wasn't going to happen. You know what I mean? Like, it's just, you can prove that, guys. You can look at the timeline. I think truly Trump sits there and just kind of pieces things in his mind and just kind of puts it out there. And we see it. And then often enough, you get the Pentagon to come, or Carolyn Leavin's like, well, what Trump actually meant was so-and-so. And it's laughably, obviously not what he meant. They do it every day. You'd think they would eventually get around this, but maybe Trump just doesn't want to hear it.
Iran knew it. They knew what was coming. It was going to come last night, and it would have gone on for a long time. And
again, why wouldn't you have done that already? Why wouldn't you just be doing that? If you keep telling us that you've already won and you want this to end and they're monster maniac, Muslim rapist terrorists, they're going to kill us for our faith. It's how do you piece it together? You don't. They know they're lying about them and they know that they are in a bad position. It has to be seen by now.
There'd be essentially very little left. There'd be nothing left.
Oh, which implied the death of all civilians, but they're way past hiding that.
If I'm given a chance to let a lot of people live,
piecing it together,
I want to give that chance. So
what? If I give a chance to let people live, I want to give that chance. Wow. Like, it's just that this is what I'm talking about. You can't deny that. He was like, let me line this together. And he's just trying to find something to say. You want to just move on, be like, next, it's like, you're in control. Why do you have to ramble through this?
Let a lot of, if I'm given a chance to let a lot of people live, I want to give that chance. So
to let a lot of people live? Like, what a weird way to say that. Like, that's just because he stumbled into it. He didn't know what he was saying when he started opening his mouth. How do we not see that?
I'm under no time constraint. You know, I don't happen to be running, but a lot of very good Republicans are running. And you
know what he means by that? And this is so transparent to what they all think, and we know this. He's not running for another administration. Now, again, people are all talking about how he put the hat on, and who knows? It wouldn't surprise me. But it could also be a troll. The point, though, is that what he's really saying is that he's not, he doesn't have to vie for the political game, because we all know, guys, that never stops. You get elected, day one, you're looking at the next election. And we know that. It's not just 2 years in forward, which become the next 2 years are all about the next election, which in and of itself should be insane since you have 2 years to do things. But all he's admitting is that, well, I've got time. I've got nothing to worry about. I'm not running for election. So every other time, it's always only been about what you need. That's politics. And you really have to know that by now, guys. They don't really care. It's all about means to an end for politicians.
have a sick ideology taking place right now that, you know, hopefully they'll be defeated because they'll destroy the country if they ever take over.
Democrat.
But this desk is like a blocking desk.
Right, so Democrats will destroy everything if they take over power. It's the same thing the Republicans said, the Democrats say, and they cycle around, and they point at each other, and they stop us from realizing they're all one thing, taking control of our lives. Guys, you just have to see that. They will, I mean, did you not just call it the Unity Party when you started? The same people you already knew, and half of them were at the front row of your inauguration? You just can't pretend like he means all this stuff. The truth is, he wants you to hate the other side so you're not focusing on them.
No matter who gets in. If it's bad, I block. And I'm good at blocking. If it's bad, if it's stupid things, like the things they want to do,
It's just hard to even take him seriously at this point. And it's not about a left-right thing. It's that he, as it is whoever, left, right, Trump, Biden, what he's doing deserves to be called out. It's very, very hard to watch. Now, as I said before, it is Groundhog Day on loop, as Godfrey pointed out. That's how it's very hard to miss how weirdly cyclical this is. Now, Golden Phoenix just laughingly points out the cycle. Trump's Iran war summarized every single week. Monday, no negotiations. Tuesday, they are liars. Wednesday, we will hit them hard. Thursday, bridges, power plants will go. Friday, their civilization will end. Saturday, they are calling and begging. Sunday, deal is close. Begin cycle again. Monday, no negotiations. I mean, it's actually not that far off. Maybe there is a pattern here or like a tactic we're missing. But CBS, Iran said Monday it had no plans to hold direct talks with Washington, despite Trump claiming otherwise. Here's a direct post. Iran says currently, this is middle of the day today, negotiations with the U.S. not happening. Now, again, it could be lying, as I say every time. But of course, when we look back 2 days from now, tomorrow, you'll usually be able to tell for yourself since it didn't happen, right? Simple, very simple. Now, here's what Trump said today, or rather just the point is in the midst of it all, this is what coming out today. Live updates. Trump, Iran has last chance to sign deal before decapitation. I'm pretty sure this was a statement from today. So you have this weird cycle where it's like, we're going to make a deal and it's all going to work out. And then all of a sudden Iran goes, that's not happening. He goes, they're begging me, which was a follow-up after they said that wasn't happening. Then it becomes, you better make the deal that you just told us they begged you for, or it'll be a decapitation strike, which why didn't you do that the last 17 times? Because he's losing. If you can't really understand this by now, you truly don't want to see it. That doesn't mean that they can't take some insane action, but we need to realize where this is. Drop site news. There's not going to be, this was, what was this again? Oh, that's right. The Strait. I put this in as I was getting ready to go live about the Strait of Hormuz. So basically about the tolls. And this is what he's saying right now. This is as of today about whether there's tolls or there's going to be tolls. And really, I mean, I already talked about it. All he says is there's not going to be tolls. There's not going to be charges. He goes, it has to be, if anyone will charge, we'll charge. He keeps doing that. But he goes, we have total control. It's verifiably not true. That's how hard that is it's cringy. You can even look at the faces of people around him when it's like, they know that's not what's happening. He says, we have a thing called a blockade with this Navy. They call it the United States Wall of Steel. It's not going to be any charging. No. Okay. Well, it's already happened more than once, so he's wrong. But this is that bombastic hubris that's unfounded. It does not represent it in the real world. That is, I see as desperate. Even Zero Hedge, who's been largely supportive of him, says less than 5 days until Trump announces the next massive Iran strike at 4:01 on Friday. Everybody's calling him out, guys. The point, they're making fun of the cycle and making fun of the fact that it's going to do it on Friday and then pull it back on Monday. And they're coming, zero hedge is largely from the financial perspective, because that's what that means, the manipulation of the cycle. Now, there was a big report coming out from corporate media about breaking down how Axios and Trump have inorganic breakdown. We're like, welcome to the party, guys. Everybody's been calling that out the entire time, but everyone sees it. Lastly, Ron Yakolik points this out in regard to CNN's report. She says, dragging the world into hell because they can't accept they lost. Now, we should question this. It is corporate media, especially CNN, but the bottom line is they'll deny this even if it's true. We know that. Feels accurate to me. The request from a senior officer at the U.S. military command carrying out Donald Trump's war with Iran came in an email. We need ideas. Quote, we are looking for new, creative, and unconventional ways to pressure and punish Iran, said an officer in the U.S. Central Command Intelligence Branch. Wrote this message on Wednesday to a broad group of military analysts. I don't know how you get away from it, if they have the source material. And of course, they could argue it's a lie or probably just as a leak and use that way to ignore it. But the truth is, guys, what does this show you? If they're going, please give us new ideas, they're floundering. We must see that by now. And that goes in line with the report that just came out of Trump screaming and cussing at the people in the room that what you have no way out of this and you tricked me into this. Like, who knows if it's accurate? He denied it. Feels accurate. But if they're going to give us ideas what to do next, it's pretty damn clear that they are not in a winning position. So we'll leave it there for today. I think it's pretty clear all the way through. Take the time to look through the source material. Don't just listen to what I have to say. Educate yourselves on this stuff, because it's important to not just be able to relay headlines, but to be able to intelligently discuss the details of these conversations. And if you believe in this platform, if you like the work that we put out, we run completely on we put out our product, which is the show, and we say, if you find value in it, let us know what it's worth to you. Right? And so that's the only way this platform exists, through your support for it. So if you think it's valuable, let us know. I love you all. As always, question everything. Come to your own conclusions. Stay vigilant.